Okay, I'd like to call this meeting of the City of Urbana Committee of the Whole to order. It's Monday, May 12th, and it's 7:01, so we should need to get started. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Committee members Barnes. Here. Bowersox.
Here.
Chenoweth.
Present.
Lewis.
Here.
Roberts.
Here.
Stevenson. Chair Smythe.
Here. Heather's out in the hallway here. She comes.
Mayor Pressing.
Here.
Okay, are there any additions to the agenda? Okay, is there a staff report at this time?
I have a report.
Yes.
I'm speaking on behalf of the 175th Urbana Birthday Commemorative Commission or Committee to let the city staff and the city council and the public listening here at home know about the next event which we're planning for the city's celebration of its 175 years of existence and growth. And this is going to be rather a fun event. First of all, this is the month of May, and the city is honoring the Park District. So the city parks are offering, they're going to be opening up the boat rides at Crystal Lake Park, and on Saturday, the 17th of the month, which should be next Saturday, between, let's see, the hours are, I think, from 12 to 7 in the evening, they're offering discounted boat rides. You can get your boat ride for $1.75. That's for the 175th anniversary. You can, there's also going to be a trivia hunt, which is going to be a lot of fun. 30-minute rides are going to be available at the discounted price. And if you can answer all of the questions on the trivia hunt, you can earn your canoe ride for free. Well, no, I guess what you do is you earn your $1.75 canoe ride. So anyways, that'll be a lot of fun on Saturday. And also at that, in the middle of the day, Saturday afternoon at 3 o'clock, we're going to try to hold a real interesting event. We're going to recreate the Old Settlers Reunion photograph that was taken back in 1883 in Crystal Lake Park. And as you know, the early pioneers gathered on a regular basis after they created the Old Settlers Reunion group. And in 1883, they met in the park, and they posed for a photograph that's been used on some of the illustrations in the catalog. So if you come at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on the 17th, and the location is going to be on a hill that is just across from the boathouse. If you take the cement bridge across the pond and turn to your left, there's going to be a gathering there, and it'll be marked. We're going to assemble whoever comes will be able to pose and be in the reproductive picture. And after we take the photograph, there's going to be a sign-up sheet. So if you'd like to have a copy of that photograph, historic photograph, you'll be able to get one for a very nominal cost. And it's hoped that the photograph will be placed in the time capsule that's going to be collecting historic documents and items for the bicentennial of Lincoln. So if you want to be in a historic photograph and possibly have your image in a time capsule, please come to Crystal Lake Park next Saturday at 3.
Dennis, do people get extra points if they come in period costume?
You never know, but I understand that Abe Lincoln may show up.
Anybody else? Mayor? Oh. Okay.
We do have an addition to the social services requests, and that's education for employment. They're requesting $8,000 from Urbana to have a program to educate minorities and women, young people in the construction trades. So that's been added to the
Okay,
mix.
I think that's on everybody's desk, right?
Right.
Everybody should have a copy of that. Okay. And we are discussing the funding next week, right? Or yeah. Okay. So by when does Danielle need to get your spreadsheet results?
Wasn't that the
Yeah, I thought that actually it was next week on Monday was when the information needed to be to Kelly.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and then she'll put it together, so I actually don't think we discuss it next week.
Okay, so by Monday, we need to be done, our first pass-through. Yes, ma'am.
And I would like to point out that we are all in period costume.
True, yes, for period 2008, yes.
1990s Mexican.
Yeah, that's true, yes, yeah, okay. Okay, any further staff stuff? We have a big agenda tonight, so rolling along, I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the April 28th meeting. Laurel, Mayor.
I have some corrections. I think some of these people were put in the wrong category on public input. It has people listed as being in support of UPTV restricted programming. I just think the whole group needs to be kind of sorted through because
Okay, so let's see.
the first two were for unrestricted, and then there seems to be a mix. I don't think Esther Pat is in favor of restricted. Neither is Morton Brussel. And I think the people who are in the next group, they include Ruth Wyman. And so I just think the whole thing needs to be redone.
Should we just send these back to?
Yeah,
Okay.
to sort them into the right category.
Okay, then in that case, we will see this in 2 weeks. Is that okay with everybody? Okay, so the minutes are not approved, and they'll come back in 2 weeks. Okay.
Dan Lewert of 310 North Busey Avenue, apartment number 4, on banning the use of mobile electronic devices while driving. And you have up to 5 minutes to present to the Committee of the Whole. Thanks.
Thank you. I hope not to use anywhere near the full 5 minutes. So just want to read one paragraph from the Matt's Law brochure. Use of a hands-free cell phone during simulated driving results in more degraded driving performance and more accidents than driving with a blood alcohol concentration of 0.08% weight per volume. And that's research from 2006. So right away, that research, in my mind, puts hands-free cell phone driving equivalent to being drunk. Okay, and I think, and first comments, I think it'll be interesting as officers study accident scenes for a year to see the difference between what drivers report about their cell phone usage versus the witnesses. And so the issue of only making it illegal if you have the cell phone and accidents caused. So to me, that's equivalent that drunken driving would be totally illegal unless an accident is caused. And that doesn't seem like a reasonable thing that people would support. Also, one of the objections was that this is a law that people would not obey, so we shouldn't have it. Well, there are plenty of laws that people don't obey. Underage drinking, drinking overage, and that, to me, that's no excuse for not having a law. With the Santa Fe, I assume that Santa Fe did not ban hands-free, so it would be the same situation in Australia, where the results would not reflect a true ban. And then last thing, Charlie might know more about this. I believe the university may have a cell phone driving simulator. I know it was exhibited during the engineering open house. If they do, I would invite City Council to try it out for themselves, just to see how it works. So I encourage a strong law to be passed, and the sooner the better.
Any questions for Dan? Thanks for your input.
Thank you.
Linda Lopez of 2102 Meadow Lark Court on mobile phones.
Hi. The first thing I want to say is thank you, Mayor Pressing, for talking about educating the public. And I think that if we could educate Champaign-Urbana and also the University of Illinois students, Parkland students. They could pass the words on to mom and dad who are coming down for the visit. For the occasional visitor who comes through town, we can surely offer them a warning if, in fact, we notice them. But the seatbelt law, we were originally told, you know, it's going to take too much trouble to enforce, and yet we've saved lives. The windshield wipers that go on in the rain in this state, some people don't recognize that if some other problem is being caused, why they're pulled to the side and reminded. I don't see us stopping people to say, in fact, you're speaking on a cell phone, but from a very personal experience, I know that I've seen many, many people just roll through the stop sign. The person in front goes, and they go just like it's a green light. I happen to be on bicycle. I happen to have grandkids on bicycle and friends on bicycle. I would just like someone who is driving the car to recognize they've got a big machine in their hands, and they're dangerous if they're not paying attention. We, in fact, offer teenagers suggestions and rules about not having someone in the front seat with them when they're first learning to drive. We offer senior citizens extra mirrors and precautions so that they can, in fact, continue to drive safely. I think we need to at least offer this to the community, not enforce it as if they were robbing a bank, but educate the individuals before someone else dies. That's my main presentation. I have many, many other thoughts, but I think you've addressed many of them. Thank you very much.
Any questions from committee members? Go ahead, Brandon.
I actually don't have a question for Linda, but another sort of public input general announcement.
Any questions for Linda, though? All right. Thank you. Appreciate your time. Brandon? go
Yeah,
ahead.
if I could make a general announcement. I know we kind of got right into this topic, but I had one other public input piece. I just wanted to announce that May is National Bike Month, and there's a number of activities people should be aware of. This week in particular is National Bike to Work Week, and tomorrow, Tuesday, May 13, is Live Strong Day. It is a cycling safety and cancer prevention and survivorship day. Friday is National Bike to Work Day, so if you can't bike all week, at least bike this Friday to work. Locally, there is a Live Strong event Tuesday night at Meadowbrook Park at 6 p.m. There's an event called Bike for Life. It will include a reading of a city proclamation about Live Strong Day, a recorded message from Lance Armstrong, the famous cyclist who's sort of promoting the cancer prevention and survivorship issues along with cycling. And there will be 2 short rides for kids and adults organized. There will be armbands, cycling safety information about cancer prevention and survivorship. The Medler Center will have a table there, and the co-sponsors are the CU Safe Routes to Schools Project, Champaign County Bikes, the Medler Center, and the MTD. So I hope people can come out Tuesday night at 6 o'clock to Meadowbrook. The weather should be good. If you can't, you can still wear yellow and black to celebrate during this week and to raise awareness. Yeah, yellow and black, there's a perfect example. And I hope people would join us for awareness and join in biking this week during Bike to Work Week. Thanks.
Thank you.
Anything further here? Okay, next up is public input. If you'd like to address committee tonight, please fill out a form and get it up to me. We have 2 speakers, and on the first item on the agenda, which is discussion on banning the use of mobile electronic devices while driving, I am going to turn the chair over to Alderperson Chenoweth here to run this part of the discussion.
So we have 3 members of the public, 2 who would like to address the committee at the time. I assume, is there a staff report on this item? Yes, okay, so what we'll do is, I just want to read out that Linda Lorenz of 409 West High Street is in support of Matt's law, no cell phone use while driving. She does not choose to address the committee, but asks that her position be entered into the record as in support with exclamation points. Then what we'll do is Linda Lopez and Dan Lewert are both in the audience. What we'll do is we'll hear the staff report and take just questions, not comments yet, from the committee members. Then we'll hear from members of the public who have the benefit of hearing the staff report. Then we'll go into discussion. So, Ron, did you want to give the staff report on this?
You all have the memo that I emailed on Friday. I don't have much more to say. than essentially that, and that is what we were trying to do is we're aware that bans have become common in statewide and as well as some municipalities. A lot of states have placed restrictions, have by law restrictions on allowing municipalities to pass such a legislation. We should feel fortunate in the great state of Illinois that we have the right as a home rule unit to be able to do something like that or even consider it. What we wanted to gather, and when I say we, it was me as well as Liz Davis, trying to find out if anyone was studying the effects of the ban once they had put it in place, whether it was for a handheld ban or a wireless, or it doesn't necessarily have to be wireless, but with using an earpiece. And there is a complete lack of study in this area. It's just not something that communities or states are doing, at least that we could locate. There are just countless statistics and model language and different models out there. We did not find, first of all, any community that has a total ban. We did not find a state nor a city that had a ban on all use of cell phone. Usually it was limited to the use of a handheld while driving. Frequently the ban was limited to provisional drivers or drivers under the age of 18. So I believe, I don't recall exactly where the information came from, but I believe that certain studies have found that those are typically the age range that are getting into the most accidents using their cell phone. But I don't know if that's necessarily very telling, because that's the age range that usually has accidents, period. So whether it's usually for some form of distracted driving or another. Staff has had a discussion. I discussed this matter with Chief Bealey at length, as well as with Bill Gray and Elizabeth Tyler, and we kind of came up with the recommendations that we have at the end of my memo, which is that we should start studying this. We should start keeping numbers on this situation so we can discover in Urbana what's going on with accidents and the use of cell phones. So what we proposed is that, and Chief Bealey is more than amenable to this, is that to have officers actually keeping a track of this information when they respond to a scene, whether it be for property damage or for injury or fatality. We wanted to study it for a year and see what kind of numbers, if any, we came back with. If it is the council's will to have an ordinance, we thought one of the issues that we could deal with was, rather than trying to put in place an ordinance that would cause a lot of consternation for police officers who are having to try to enforce it, we thought, well, let's just get to the end result. If you are caught, or if it is determined that you were using a cell phone at the time of an accident, or whether it was injury or property damage, that you would be whacked with the maximum fine that our city allows, which is $750. So that would have been the most that we could have done, even if we had a total ban on it. The most that we can fine someone in the city of Urbana is $750. So the proposal is, the police officer responds, does an investigation of a crash, and it is determined through eyewitness testimony or through self-admission or through whatever circumstances may be available for that officer to reasonably use at that time. And the officer determines that a cell phone played a role in that accident, then you would receive a citation for city court or notice to appear for violation of that particular ordinance.
Are there any questions from the committee members? Okay, if not, we'll hear from, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Dennis.
And maybe, I don't know, maybe this is going to be for Chief Beely, but I understand that because there is concern, it's possible that there might be other communities that are starting to collect data. Do we have a sense of how many people are now putting attention on this as a serious data collection point?
What we had was anecdotal. Ms. Davis was able to find out that, for example, Santa Fe, New Mexico is attempting, or is thinking, I should say considering, it is in their public safety committee right now, is considering repealing their ordinance because of the difficulty in enforcing it and the difficulty in, they haven't seen any change. What some of the communities report is that initially with the ban goes into effect, they do, they first start writing a lot of warning tickets, like for example, Winnetka wrote a lot of warning tickets, and then it had a lot of enforcement, and it was like the second highest number of tickets that they wrote was for the cell phone ban. They found the next year that the accident rate went up. Now, is that because of cell phone? No, I don't know. It could be for other reasons, but the fact is they didn't find that it dropped the rate of accidents at all. Other communities have just found basically what I think a lot of us intuitively knew, which is that it's just very difficult to enforce that type of thing. My experience as an attorney and as a prosecutor, my opinion is that people are not going to obey this ordinance. They're not going, and that's why I think it's better to get them at the end. Like if you caused an accident and you were using your cell phone, well, now it doesn't matter whether you believe in it or you don't, you're going to be punished for that distraction.
Dennis, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess a follow-up question on this is, isn't it going to be rather hard to determine if a person actually was using the cell phone? I mean, it's going to be based on witness hearsay, or I guess sworn statements are going to be taken. But I don't know how we can rely upon that completely. Or
well, I mean, it would be the same as any other accident that was investigated. If there are witness testimony or that the driver of the vehicle had their head turned and was talking to someone in the back seat, or happened to be looking the wrong direction when they blew the stop sign, or was looking down, when you're getting into situations as to who's going to be cited, usually there's an underlying ticket, and that would be for whatever the offense was, illegal lane usage, failure to obey a traffic control device. If there was an accident that was caused by that and there are witnesses available, of course we would inquire, the police department would inquire, and I or my colleague Kurt would try to determine the facts and see if we could make our burden of proof. We have to prove by a preponderance of the evidence, so that just means that it's more likely than not. So that's 50% plus some amount that it's more likely that you were using the cell phone and it distracted you than not. It's not impossible, but yeah, it's difficult, but I think it's a reasonable way to at least start this discussion and in terms of having some sort of legislation.
Robert?
Do you think having it at the end would be a deterrent?
To the extent that $750 would deter most people, but that's the maximum amount allowed by our ordinances. That's the most that we can fine anybody for anything. So either that's $750 is going to be there beforehand, or it's going to be there at the end. At least at the end, we know an accident did occur, and we know that if we can show it, if we have witness statements or admissions or whatever, at least we can show, well, this person was using a cell phone. It contributed to them being distracted. They weren't looking where they went. They blew a stop sign. They blew a light. They did something that violated the vehicle laws, and an accident resulted. I think that's an easier model for us to enforce than trying to note whether or not someone is using some sort of mobile device. And I say cell phone, but I want you all to know I also intend to include in that language, texting as well. I remember, Mr. Smythe, you had asked about, use of texting materials, texting devices, and many of the kids, at least nowadays, are using those devices, and there's at least 2 states that ban texting for all devices, for all drivers.
Other questions from committee members? I just have go ahead, Dennis.
Sorry, but I guess I was wondering, because I know that people on council are concerned about this issue, about the 1-year wait. Do you think, I guess I'd be kind of curious to know if it would take a year to get adequate information, or 6 months in adequate survey time? And I guess I'm just going to ask that question.
So is your question for Ron or the chief or who?
I'd say Ron.
Okay.
Well, I want to make it clear, we weren't talking about waiting a year to pass that ordinance. We were talking about passing the ordinance and then studying the issue for a year. There would maybe be some sort of sunset provision in the ordinance, and we would take a look at it, and 1 year collecting data to see, could we collect the data? What might be, there might be some situations where officers are like, look, we just cannot get that kind of data out of people. There's, it's hard to discern. Or they might say, yeah, we're getting a lot of information. It's just a matter of asking the right questions of the right people at accidents. And at the end of that year, it would come back to the council for you all to take a look at and determine whether or not you wanted to either, continue with the ordinance that we already had passed, or if you felt that at that point something else was needed.
Mayor?
I would think we would have to have an education program, and people would have to know that when they drive in Urbana that there's a penalty if you get into an accident while on a cell phone.
I have to be honest with you, that was one of the other concerns too, was outsiders. We're unique from a lot of other communities in that, like other Big Ten schools, we have a large influx of population that goes in and out of the city. Putting aside the student base, there are a tremendous amount of visitors that come to the community from all over the country, frankly, and just for one weekend. Now, we could put up signage, but I don't know if we could put up enough signage that people from without the community would know that once you enter Urbana city limits, there's this ordinance that says you can't use your cell phone when you're driving. That would be difficult, but in terms of educating our own populace, now that may be something we could do. I don't know. I don't think the police department would be the right department to do it, but we maybe could come up with some sort of campaign.
Another question, there are countries that have banned cell phones.
Australia.
Have they, if the whole country's done it, did they notice a decrease in accidents? Or how effective have these laws been in other countries?
Mayor, in all honesty, I did not study Australia. Australia is the first one that comes to mind that has completely, I think they were one of the first that completely banned cell phone while driving, but I confine my research to the communities within the United States.
Charlie?
I'd like to clarify that. I don't think any country has banned the use of cell phones entirely. You think Australia is actually banned completely? It's my impression that no country has banned it completely. A number of countries have hands-free bans, and the only city that has done a complete ban is Bombay, India.
I could be incorrect. I thought there's a lot of data out there on this particular issue, but I thought Australia had completely banned it while driving, but I can double check.
I had a question actually for the chief of police, if I could. Just a couple of questions about possible enforcement. The first question I have is, I'm thinking about accidents where there would be significant, especially accidents like running a stoplight is a really significant accident. It can cause death, usually because stoplights are on roads where the speed limit is higher than on roads where we have stop signs. So the question I have is, do we have cameras mounted on most stoplights? I've seen them on some in downtown, for example. And would cameras be able to be used to determine whether someone was on a cell phone when the accident happened at a stoplight?
Currently, we have no cameras on intersections on lights to monitor traffic. Some of those, I think what you're seeing are preemption lights, where it turns the lights for fire trucks and stuff. However, going through the state legislature right now is a bill which will give all counties, additional counties, I think the population less than or greater than 75,000, which includes Champaign County, specifically mentioned, the ability to do red light camera enforcement. And my staff has recently met with a couple of companies to learn about what other communities are doing and what the capabilities of cameras on the red lights. Currently, though, the law does not allow video or still picture of the driver. It's rear license plate only. It will give you video of the car going through the intersection, but not specifically of the driver.
In the case of if we were to mount these cameras, it would just be of the car. And I just want to, for the record, say I don't actually support those cameras. I thought we had them and that they might be useful in this situation, but I'm not advocating for more video surveillance of the public. The second question I have is, could you give us some kind of sense of how, when an accident occurs, the police may be able to figure out whether a cell phone was used and contributed to that accident? And would you have subpoena power to look at cell phone records, or would it mostly be witness interviews that you would do?
Going to your first question, basically accidents, right now we're looking at the predominant cause, the primary cause of accidents. So if somebody runs a stop sign, makes an unsafe left-hand movement, causes an accident, that's basically where our investigations stop now. Most police departments it is. I envision if we go forth with this, we'll dig a little bit further. We'll have to have a standard set of questions. We ask each driver, each witness to an accident. Subpoenaing of cell phone records is very difficult. We do it in very high-profile, serious criminal cases. We have to go through the state's attorney's office. We have to get staff to assist us over there. It has to go in front of a judge. So that we have to send the subpoena to the large cell phone company in New York. We have to get the records back. It would not be something we could routinely do. In the case of a fatality or very serious accident, if we thought that played a role, I would think most certainly we could pursue that avenue. If I could take a moment to go back, I think that many of the people that we talk to, that we ask, that are in accidents, are actually truthful. I won't say all, but I think if somebody was on a cell phone and they ran a stop sign or swerved over and run into another car, I think that there's a number of people that would tell us that. We have a number, probably a majority of accidents have one or more witnesses. And so I think that question, was either driver on a cell phone, would get us some information from an independent witness. And quite honestly, in many accidents, that's how we determine who's at fault. If we have an independent witness, because neither party has a, so.
Any other questions? Charlie?
Two things. There are actually cameras located on some state highway mounts up high, and they are strictly sort of black and white to determine if there's a problem in traffic. There's some up around Interstate 74 in Cunningham. There are a couple at the intersection of, they're along the state highway at Springfield and Wright Street, and they report back to the Public Works Departments. The Public Works Departments have some monitors that can actually see, have those come back. But they literally, they're very grainy, and all you can see is these sort of traffic flow issues on those. So those are floating around. And I've got nothing like having, how do we live without internet access? That's what I want to know, you know. I'm reading a report here, and anyway, Mark Woodward point out that driving with a handheld phone is illegal throughout Australia, but drivers are allowed to use hands-free devices. So the ban is thought to have dubious value because there is no difference between using a phone when it's hands-free or hand up to your ear. That's what the research shows, and the research just showing that over and over again. The Carnegie Mellon thing shows the same thing. So you're not going to see, I'm stealing my thunder from later, is you're simply not going to see a result by having just a hands-free ban, because it is ineffective, because it's no different than having the phone up to your ear.
Okay, if questions are closing, go ahead, Mayor.
Yeah. Are most people using handheld cell phones when they're driving in Australia? Well, maybe they wouldn't be, but, you know, I would think that if half of the people were using handheld and you passed a ban, that should have some effect on the accident rate.
Let's see, reading down here, it's a 2006 story here. 39% of licensed drivers aged 18 to 65 in New South Wales and Western Australia have used a handheld phone while driving. Just over 12% admitted to writing a text message while at the wheel. And let's see, it says almost 147,000 people have been forced to take evasive action to avoid an accident because of using a cell phone, if I'm reading it correctly. I'll send around this. It's from Ergonomics Today, ErgoWeb. I'll send the link around. But it's December 15th, 2006. I've not seen it before. But it talks about the human factors, Journal of Human Factors in Ergonomic Society.
I think we would be rare even in studying the issue. I mean, New York, the state of New York was one of the few jurisdictions that I saw that even keeps statistics. They divided up into 3 categories: human factors, vehicle factors, and environmental factors. And then under human factors, they have a laundry list of different causes. It could be everything from falling asleep to distraction, but they actually break out cell phone, and I reflected that in our memo. It's just amazing that more communities aren't, you know, they pass the ban or the state passes the ban, but they're not actually studying the issue more closely in seeing if in fact they need to have, you know, a total ban or if the partial ban is working at all.
Okay. Can we move on to public input then? Okay. Okay, the discussion item on a banning the use of mobile electronic devices while driving is open for discussion at this point. In terms of structuring the conversation, is there anyone with a specific motion or specific outcomes, or would committee members prefer to weigh in on some of the issues of the memo? I'm going to try to keep the conversation at 20 minutes. I'll let you know when we're each 10-minute increment, because this is the 3rd time we've spoken on this. Lynn?
I'm in support of the staff recommendations, both A and B, and I would like to make a motion that we ask city staff to design an appropriate ordinance which would be enacted by us, which would implement the maximum fine if individual was involved in an accident where a cell phone device or texting device was involved. So I'd like to make that motion.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
A motion from Lynn and a second from Dennis. Would you like to speak to the motion, or are we open up for discussion?
I'll speak
ahead.
to it. I guess I think this seems like a logical approach. It gives us a year to identify what kind of issues we have in our community, and I like the idea of an ordinance. In fact, frankly, it'd be nice if the state would enact something that would be bigger than $750, so that there would be a really loud message to the community that at large, and that if you come to Illinois and you are involved in this kind of accident where this is what has caused the accident, you're in deep trouble here. So I'd like to see that on a more broad basis, but we can take a small step toward that in our community, and I think that seems like a logical step.
Charlie?
I, of course, would like to go much further, though I think that a serious penalty like this would be the part of a complete cell phone ban. I think, it is a first step, and I think it should be part of a complete cell phone ban, and I think we are ready to move forward on a complete ban. First, I'm disappointed that after 6 weeks of having my ordinance out there, we've gotten so little back, really. There's no analysis, independent, verification of all the evidence that was brought forth by Matt's Law, by myself, by my wife and others on this issue. There's no discussion of that material, which says, this research shows that there's a serious problem here, that there's a risk. So there's no addressing that aspect of this. It's more, we've been redirected in this other direction of, we can't enforce it. So first, I don't think we need to stop the policy of having internal memos that don't go to the public. Okay, if we have a memo that's late, it needs to be distributed to the public via our web page and via email to reporters and such, in the same way that we send out amended agendas in advance. So, when I see something that's labeled as an internal memo, I felt very uncomfortable. I wanted to send it out to the public. I wanted to post it, and I didn't feel comfortable doing that. So I would really, unless it fits one of the criteria of the Open Meetings Act, I don't think it's appropriate to have internal memos. I'm concerned that we've not addressed, we haven't addressed the real issue, which is all the research that's been presented here. What is ignored is the evidence that there's a substantial risk in using a cell phone while driving. What is ignored is a chance to take a leadership role at the state and national level. What is ignored is a chance to begin the process of making the road safer for everyone involved. Now, taking a look at some of the stuff in the memo itself, major point is that the Governor's Highway Safety Association, and I spelled it out wrong in my note here, doesn't support hands-free cell phone bans as they give a false sense of safety. And that is exactly the point here. And on the flip side of my note, I actually print out the page that's being referred to in its entirety. And what I want to draw your attention to is the second paragraph, which says that the GHSA discourages the use of cell phones while driving. Discourages the use of cell phones while driving. In a recent media alert, Chairman Chris Murphy has stated that all drivers, but particularly teens, need to focus solely on driving, and that means the cell phone needs to be off. That's their main point. They go on to talk about how there's various kinds of research, and they point out that the latest item from Carnegie Mellon is that any type of cell phone is a distraction to the driver. 30-some% of your cognitive abilities are taken away when you're talking. Okay, when you have a passenger in the car, the passenger is helping, they're aware of the situation. When you're talking on a cell phone to somebody, they're not aware of what's going on in the traffic. Yes, it's good that states are beginning to start to measure these things, to collect statistics. That's that's a very important point. But what they go on to say is that just banning the hands-free stuff is, allowing only hands-free, banning handheld gives a false sense of safety, and that's exactly the point, is that it's ineffective, and we don't want to do that because it doesn't work. If we're going to do something, we need to have a complete ban. I'm a little concerned as a statistician that gathering statistics at the local level will have very little value over just a one-year period. It's a very small sample size, and I suspect the incidence will be fairly small, and so it's much more appropriate to get stuff at the state and national level or collected over many years. I'm not as convinced that people will be very forthcoming about why they had an accident, especially given the attention that we've given to cell phones in this community. It'd be nice if we had something like the state does, where you can demand cell phone records just like you can demand that somebody take a sobriety test. Okay, that's one of the conditions there. So that is a difficult point. I will concede that getting to that is not an easy thing to do. But I think the whole issue of enforcement is a bit of a red herring. Speed limits are posted, and people don't speed because they tend to be law-abiding. There isn't a police officer present on every block with a radar gun to enforce it, but every once in a while they're there and they catch you doing something that you shouldn't be doing, and that's enough to get compliance from most folks. Similarly, we don't need a police officer standing on every corner to peer into vehicles to see if cell phones are in use. I think it's sufficient to enforce the law as able. Enforcement and education is the standard approach for encouraging compliance with laws. So, though I support the first effort here, I actually would like to see us go much further and go ahead and enact the ordinance that I put forth 6 weeks ago.
Brandon.
Yeah, I am in support of Lynn's motion, but actually my position is somewhere between Lynn and Charlie's, and I could suggest sort of a middle ground. I definitely support actions 1 and 2 that comprise Lynn's motion, but I do think the research shows that this is a dangerous enough behavior, and at least with handheld devices, enough other cities have banned them and enough has been done that I think I'm ready to do that here as well. So I suggest some middle ground of perhaps considering a ban for handheld devices and handheld text messaging devices, but not the total ban on hands-free devices, in conjunction with the penalty, as Ron and as Lynn's motion includes, the penalty for if you get in a crash, you pay a penalty if it's found that you were on the phone or texting during the crash. The penalty could cover both handheld and texting and hands-free devices, so that even if you're on a hands-free device, even though we wouldn't ban that, we wouldn't go as far as a total ban, the penalty would still apply in that situation as a disincentive to do that. I just don't feel comfortable yet passing a total ban or voting for a total ban because of my concerns that, first off, we just don't have models of other cities that have done it, and I don't think I understand yet how we would enforce it in the enforcement issues. So it's those concerns that lead me to not support fully the total ban that Charlie's advocating for, but I would like to go farther and do a ban on handheld phones like Chicago and dozens of other cities have done.
Other comments from committee members? Charlie. Actually, Robert, who hasn't spoken, and then Charlie.
Well, I've listened to quite a bit of the information, and I kind of concur with Charlie with regard to a total ban requirement, because the psychology that when someone talks about the amount of distraction you have, whether you have a phone in your hand or whether you're listening to it, and I recognize that just in talking with friends that have gotten caught by the police and said, yeah, they got me. I went right through the red light and I had it up, and I asked him, I said, would you be in favor of a total ban? He said, yeah, I'd like to do it, but the bottom line is I'm putting people at risk. So I think we have to move up along with technology and recognize the implication of technology and do the appropriate things that's necessary to stay in line with technology. And that would be, in my opinion, a total ban, and including bicycles. I'm sorry. Well, they do. They can ride, and they do even try to text. I have a big bike path in front of my house, and I see students all the time going down the road trying to negotiate this path. It's pretty wide. was 10 foot wide, so they managed to get by, but oftentimes it's on the phone. And I think for too long, laws have lagged behind technology, and it's time to step up to the plate.
Charlie?
Well, you know, Brendan, I think that one of the whole points I've been trying to raise in all of this is that the hands-free bans are worthless, that all the evidence suggests that they are worthless. You know, you have places that are looking at it and saying it's had no effect on the outcome here, and that's because they are worthless. There's no difference between handheld and hands-free, so it's just not worth the paper it's printed on. Let me try something here. I'm going to try doing this in steps here and see how many pieces we can incorporate. But I need I need Mr. Lewis here to second my motion here, I hope.
We have a motion on the table.
Okay. Well, I was going to offer an amendment here. I would like to amend the motion to include, as a first step here, a ban on all text messaging via PDA, cell phone, computer, whatever, electronic devices in a car as part of LINs. While driving, yes.
So we have a motion from Charlie. Is there a second? There's a second from Brandon. Just a point of process. We do have a member of the public who submitted his name during the conversation, and I was wondering if we could have the consent of the committee that he speak to us. Okay, so we have a motion and a second to ban text messaging. I just want to be clear, that's on top. That's an amendment to the initial motion that Lynn has. And I do have a input from Nick Ilias. Is that how you pronounce your name, Nick? Lice. From 1210 Briarcliff on banning the use of mobile devices while driving. If you could limit your input to 5 minutes, please. Yeah. Thanks.
I'll be brief. I just want to address the fact that it seems as if most of this is geared not completely towards just teenagers, but also basically to everyone who ever uses a cell phone while driving. Speaking as a teenager myself, I was just wondering, based off of the distraction aspect of using a cell phone while driving, would this ordinance also include the use of radio or a person playing their music or being distracted while possibly changing the station? Also, because I've seen people who have gotten in accidents while doing that, so I was just wondering if that would also be a part of this ordinance. That's all.
Charlie, could you just address that briefly?
Yeah, it's not my intention to include those. It's strictly, this is very much patterned after the U of I's ban on the use of electronic phones and computers and PDAs, and that's where the language comes from. It also mimics, in a sense, the Chicago cell phone ordinance, which requires hands-free sets. And so it's very similar language to that. Radios and other devices don't have the same impact in the research. They can be distracting, but they don't have the same impact as using a cell phone while driving. Using a cell phone takes your attention away for quite a while. Dialing and texting is very distracting. That increases your risk by a factor of 9. Talking increases your risk by a factor of 4. When you reach over and mess with a radio, yeah, you're distracted for a moment, but it's usually pretty quick. And so if you choose the wrong moment to go over there and there's a red light coming up and you choose to look at your phone, look at your radio, yeah, you're gonna, that's a poor choice of timing of messing with your radio. So no, it doesn't apply to those kinds of electronics.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any questions for Nick? Okay. Thanks for your input, Nick. Laura?
Well, I think there's sort of common sense understanding that drivers are distracted. We took a tour sponsored by the Farm Bureau, and John Reefsteck was talking about people going off the road near his farm because they were talking on their cell phones. So what I'm concerned about is Charlie's statement that banning the handheld ones is useless, because if you just look at it, and I don't know what the ratio is, but let's say half of the people have handheld and half the people have hands-free, if you banned half of them, that ought to have some impact on accidents. So it's sort of...
You just go out and buy a handset. A headset, I mean. You know, a lot of people have headsets.
You're saying
yeah.
it makes the people change
Yeah,
their mode.
you're right. Yeah. You just go out and get a headset, so you end up with the same number of people.
Well, you would still think that there'd be some effect.
Okay, yeah. I guess I could say that's, you know, when the reason we've seen some dips is, you know, while people, you know, while they don't have a headset, they quit using their cell phone, they go out and get a headset, they get back on, and the accident rate goes back to where it was before. That's a testable hypothesis.
So we have the amendment on the table to ban text messaging. Is there discussion on that specific amendment at this point? Okay. If not, all those in favor of text messaging as a ban, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That carries. So we have Charlie, go ahead.
I'd like to make another motion. I'd like to make a motion to ban the use of cell phones and similar related electronic devices while driving.
We have a motion.
That's an amendment, as an amendment here.
Can I get a clarification?
Yes.
Brandon?
Is that your intention for, that it apply to handheld and hands-free?
Yes, all devices.
Okay.
All electronic devices of that sort. As per, you know, so in other words, we have the penalty, we have the ban on text messaging, and now I want to get back, in effect, bring back the original motion, which is, and I'm providing this as an amendment I move to ban the use of electronic communication devices per my original proposal.
Okay, we have a
while driving.
motion. Is there a second? That motion dies for lack of a second. So we're back to the initial motion with an amendment to ban text messaging. And it's my understanding the initial motion is that we would enact an ordinance. Well, the staff would bring back an ordinance to us, so we're not enacting an ordinance at this point, that would basically enact that ordinance and have a one-year period where we study the issue and the accident rates. During that one-year period, if there was an accident, people could be, and it included the use of electronic devices, whether it be hands-free or handheld, there could be a penalty of $750. Is that correct? I just want to be really clear what we're voting on.
Correct.
Okay. Discussion, Mayor.
I would hope that we would be monitoring what other states are doing. If they're starting to keep records on accidents and how much cell phone involvement, we ought to keep track of that too, because that answers your concern about Urbana being too small a sample.
Ron, go ahead.
A couple things I needed to clarify. You did not want whether or not you wanted the studying of the issue to be in the ordinance, or is that just something that's going to be done at the direction of the mayor to the staff, number one, and number two, to specify who is going to do this monitoring, because it's not a legal issue, and this is not going, I don't feel qualified to be studying issues that fall outside of the law. I can't bring study and the statistical analysis to something that isn't a legal issue.
Okay. So in terms of the first one, what was your intention, Lynn?
That's part of the ordinance.
Part of the ordinance. And the second, I believe, if I speak for the committee, is that we're asking staff to go have a conversation about that and bring it back to us about who would be studying it. Is that correct?
Perfect.
So we're not directing you at this point, but we're directing the staff when you come back with the ordinance to also talk about who will be doing the studies. Dennis.
Maybe one way of discussing about how to collect the data would be just to request that the city council requests that the police department collect information about cell phone use as part of the accident report, which is not exactly studying it to come to a conclusion about the data. Wouldn't it be possible to legally collect data concerning possible effects, accident?
I think that's what we were talking about, right?
So that's established, all right?
Yeah, but that was local information. I think what was being discussed was, by the mayor, was collecting information nationwide.
Other discussion on the motion that's on the table? Lynn and then Charlie.
I think as far as collecting additional information, I mean, the mayor can discern who on the staff can work on that during this time frame.
That was essentially, I thought the mayor could keep track, the stuff that's going on nationally, we'll just have to follow. I think this is an issue that's going to just keep rearing its ugly head over time. I intend to keep you abreast of developments. But I would like to thank you for your attention on this matter and to at least get this far with this. I think it is an important first step.
Mayor?
I would, I will suggest that we'll have a public education component to this, too. This is going to be an ordinance that's going to be like the ones that we pass, that we review it after a certain period of time and then, make any corrections that we need to make. But I think that the education part has to be very important.
Okay. Brandon, we're rounding out 20 minutes now, so I just, for folks who maybe haven't spoken, or if we could not repeat our comments at this point. Go ahead, Brandon.
Yeah, I'll be very brief and then make a quick motion. The education campaign, I think, is critical. I think that problem in other cities where there's a dip and then people return to the behavior is something we would not want to repeat. And I know there are successful cities that have successfully really lowered the rate by having an education campaign and an enforcement campaign. And we've seen with seatbelts, after many years of educating people about seatbelts, that it pays off. Regarding bikes, I agree. This ban should apply to people riding a bike in the street as well as people driving a vehicle in the street. And I think it would automatically apply. Pedestrians are another issue, and I don't know how we haven't discussed that tonight. This would automatically apply, as I understand it, to bikes because in Illinois they're covered under the motor vehicle code when a bike's riding down the street. The same rules of traffic apply to them as to other vehicles that are gas-powered or electrical-powered or whatever. So it's my intention in all of this that the ban would apply to people riding a bike. They would not be able to text. And Charlie, you didn't go ahead and sort of make the next motion that I thought you were going to make, but I would be interested in seeing whether people would support the partial ban of banning handheld cell phones without banning hands-free devices, the thing that Chicago and dozens and dozens and dozens of other cities have done. I think it makes sense to me to take a stand and say that we would want to ban this behavior because we believe it's unsafe. So I'd like to make the motion to just see what support there is for that.
So your motion is to ban handheld devices with the enactment of the ordinance, and that does not include hands-free devices?
Correct.
Is there a second for that motion? It dies for lack of a second.
I have a question for
Okay, Charlie, go ahead.
Yeah, actually, the issue of pedestrians is a separate one, and one of the things we need to get clarified too is since bicycles are included in the vehicle code when they're on the street, it's not clear when a bicycle is on a off-road path whether it's a vehicle or a pedestrian. That's real confusing. So Mike's shaking his head. So that's one thing that needs to be clarified here. One, I was thinking about I know Heather was interested, and maybe I think Lynn mentioned pedestrians at one time. One thing we could consider is something like this, and this would be a separate issue, would be that if a person jaywalks while using a cell phone or text messaging, that could be considered an aggravated version of jaywalking, and they could be penalized, like double or something, because a pedestrian puts themselves at risk a lot more than they put anybody else at risk. They put bicyclists at risk if they step in front of the bicyclist. The bicyclist is going to go flying, and the bicyclist is more likely to get hurt than the pedestrian most of the time. A bicyclist on a cell phone puts pedestrians at risk, and he puts cars at risk that try to avoid having an accident. So there's a progression there, but the risk is, driving a car while distracted is far more dangerous because you're in a 2-ton or 3-ton vehicle. You're not, the momentum makes you the dangerous vehicle. As a pedestrian or even a bicyclist, momentum is not a big factor there. So it's a little bit different. But that is one way to deal with pedestrians. But we do need a clarification on bicycles when they are not on the road.
Okay, other comments? Just briefly, if I could comment, I've been silent on the topic. I support Litton's motion. I think it's a good place to start. I feel throughout this entire conversation both sympathetic and wanting more information. And so I think this is a mechanism for us to get information and to do enforcement when we absolutely are certain that there's this relationship between an accident and cell phone usage. Since we started this conversation, I've tried to prove to myself that I'm more distracted when I talk on a cell phone while I'm driving. And I know that I use common sense, and I also look at statistics. My own common sense is I'm more distracted thinking than I am talking on a cell phone. But I do see the statistics, and they don't pan out with my own personal experience. Yeah, I shouldn't be driving while thinking. This is what I've learned. I also have, haven't been in a car accident since I was 16, knock on wood, and I'm extremely cautious when I drive. The second thing is, I think the education campaign needs to not only be, you shouldn't be talking on your cell phone, but it should be the wait a minute campaign. Because really, what it takes is when you're in traffic and there's something that's happening that's chaotic, I always say, hold on a second. Sometimes I even put down my phone and say, hold on a second. I put down the phone, I deal with this situation, I pick the phone back up again. And I feel like that's an important component. I think that the accidents happen because people don't wait a second. They can see that something's going on and they continue the conversation. I have concerns about ordinances like this being a form of government harassment. I also am concerned about public safety, but I'm definitely concerned about another thing like, I have a list of things like you can't dumpster dive you can't take something out of somebody's trash can, that's considered illegal. You can't, your grass grows over 8 inches, you have this, that. There's all these little nitpicky things, and I don't want to become a community that just nitpicks and stops people for picking up a cell phone. But the last thing I'll say on this topic is I think technology is changing so much, and I watch technology carefully on a daily basis, such that next year the conversation is going to be different. Because I was in a car with a person last week who had a cell phone, but the cell phone didn't look like anything we've ever thought of as a cell phone. It was basically like a radio installed in their car, and the speakers from the radio spoke to you when someone was on the cell phone, and you spoke out loud to nothing in particular. I think there was a microphone somewhere, but you spoke and you heard the person coming in, and it was very much like someone sitting next to you. You heard them come through the speaker. And so I feel like this concept of having a phone that's up to your ear, not only is it not healthy, but it's probably going to go away within a year to a year and a half because of concerns around people holding things. And I think that people aren't going to have that kind of hands-on physicality with technology for much longer. So perhaps it will become a moot point. I do see it partly as a design problem. I do certainly support studying the issue, and I'm absolutely concerned about pedestrian safety and bicycle safety and people in cars being safe. And honestly, I think a big component is people learning how to drive incredibly cautiously. You cannot drive in this community and be safe unless you are extremely cautious and slow, because there are so many pedestrians and bicyclists. You have to drive in a completely different way than you drive any other place. And we need to figure out how to educate the public across the board how to be safe. And I feel like MTD has taken the lead on that with some of the accidents that they experience, and I think the city can play a role as well. Okay, we're at 30 minutes. Other comments? Charlie?
Well, the point about the technology is a good one. And so if the car at the same time had a camera so that the person on the other end of this nebulous cell phone conversation could see what was going on, they would be like a passenger in the car. But they're not, because because they don't see what's going on, they can't actually help you drive. They're a distraction. The same thing, when you put the phone down, you're actually better off than a person who has the phone has a headpiece, because you've stopped the conversation and you're concentrating. All your cognitive ability is now back on driving and not listening to a person. It's the sheer act of listening to somebody that reduces your cognitive ability by 37%, according to the Carnegie Mellon study. So that's an important point. So the other thing too is, if our cars were smarter, okay, if they could sense that there was traffic in front of you and cut off the phone. If they could sense that there's a person, there's a lot of pedestrians around, it could cut you off. It's the same thing. And that's exactly the point. In our community, because we have so many pedestrians, because we have so many bicyclists, a person driving a vehicle needs to be extra cautious. Okay, they need to realize that the road is shared with pedestrians and bicyclists and other types of vehicles and other types of users on the road. And that's why, if anything, if we ban text messaging and we have this severe penalty and we have an education campaign, we may get most of what we want, and that's what I'm hopeful of. So.
Okay. Is it time for a vote? We have a motion before us that includes the ban of text messaging, education, and enforcement. All those in, go ahead, Ron.
You're saying the ordinance is including it? I'm wanting to make sure that I
Okay.
get the language that needs to go in it.
Okay, it's my understanding, please correct me if I'm wrong, that we're asking staff to prepare a motion that includes
Not a motion, an ordinance.
an ordinance, I'm sorry, that includes a ban on text messaging, which was passed by amendment. While driving, yes. Text messaging while being in a vehicle. We would, study the issue for a year, and we would begin enforcement when there was an accident that included the use of an electronic device, hands-free, handheld, text message, whatever. There would be penalties applied.
Are bicycles to be included in this, if you want me to put them like bicycles while on public highway?
As they're defined in the motor vehicle.
Yeah, I believe the language actually includes moving vehicles, and bicycles are included in that. Yes, and it has an education program.
And you want that part of the ordinance as well? Okay.
I'm seeing head nods, yes. Okay, is that clear? Mm-hmm. All right. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That carries. I will pass the chair back to Charlie for the budget
Okay.
overview.
Ron, I assume you're leading this? And for members of the public, we have the annual budget and budget statements here to work from. Are these posted online?
These are online.
These are online, as are all the past budgets. And are copies already available at the library and stuff like that as well? Yeah, there are copies at the library and several other public places.
Well, this is a very brief overview. I'll summarize it for you. We're talking about spending $46 million next year, which is an increase of 4.2% over this year. Most of it's coming from our revenues, but we do have some unspent carryover we expect from this year, and we will be borrowing about $456,000 for Philo Road. Most of our capital improvements are transferred into a fund called capital improvements from the general fund every year. This budget keeps the tax rate constant at $1.29, and we expect 5% increases in assessed value. 3% of that is new construction, and 2% is the value of existing property. And this is a decrease from the growth of prior years. The average was over 8% for the last 3 years. So I think one thing is that the motor fuel tax, since it's based on cents per gallon, does not grow when the price goes way up. And in fact, our receipts can go down if people buy less gasoline. So we have a 20% increase in prices there without the revenue to cover this. And Public Works will be the biggest part of a budget next year, 36% of the total. The next biggest is public safety, fire and police, and then all other departments are about another 1/3. Our main part of our budget is for salaries, wages, and fringe benefits, and we have big increases in health insurance and pensions. These are commitments that are beyond, well, health insurance isn't beyond our control, but the pensions are set by the state legislature. We have commitments to our labor contracts, and this budget includes a 3% cost of living adjustment for the non-unionized employees. The new fund is public art. We've had a lot of discussion on that. This includes $119,000. And most of that is from the TIF funds, and $50,000 I put in to be raised from donations and arts events. The biggest part of our budget, if you can include all our funds, including the TIF funds, is the property tax. But if you talk about our general fund, the biggest is the sales tax. And the big issues coming up for us are sustainability, not to mention sustainability of our financial situation. And we will be having a lot of public input on this. And Ron Eldridge is the gentleman who put this all together, and he's the one that made the revenue estimates. So do you have questions? Do you want to say something, Ron?
I was just going to quickly run through slides of which most of the information I think you just touched on, Mayor. Oops. Restore. Yeah. I don't like using this mouse. As was mentioned, the budget was released today. This is for our budget July 1 of 2008 through June 30th of 2009. Boy, that makes me feel old. Pretty soon we're going to say 2010, and it seems like we just finished year 2000. Yeah, I'm trying to get there, but it won't. For some reason, it won't allow me to. Okay, thank you. Okay. Our total revenues. Now, this is for the general operating fund revenues, which is on page 16 of the budget, and that's the most important page in the entire document. That's really where the rubber meets the road. That compares revenues for our general operating funds, and those are the funds that we think of as the city day-to-day services: police, fire, public works, library, and those revenues that finance those. The total general fund, the total city fund includes the capital improvement funds that the mayor mentioned, the motor fuel tax, includes pensions, and a number of other funds too. So really, if you get a good handle on the general operating fund, you get a pretty good idea of what's happening to the city. Our total revenues in the general fund are about almost $23.5 million, and that's up 4.5%. The detail of those is on pages 37 to 40, each one of those funds. The largest general fund is the sales tax, and it is up 5.5%. That's a very healthy growth. The reason why that's up 5.5, our regular recurring sales tax increase is up 3.2%. But we also have the impact of Meijer opening and the sales tax beginning in November. I'm hoping they open in September and we would collect that in November. So that increases that 3.2 to 6.3. But then we have a little negative impact. We lost the off-track betting, which I include as part of sales tax in general figure. And so that reduced it at 0.8%, so a total of 5.5%. The utility tax, another large producer, is up 3.5%, and the state income tax is up 5%. The state income tax is based on projections provided by the Illinois Department of Revenue. The property tax, as the mayor mentioned, the rate is projected to stay the same at $1.29. The assessed value is expected to go up 5%. And on page 27 in the document, you'll see a chart showing the last 3 years of property tax in very much detail. That 5% is made up of 3% is new construction and annexations, of which we would like to capture as our costs go up. And then the other 2% is growth in the current value of properties. And that 2% to a homeowner of a home that is valued at $175,000, that would equate to an additional $17 next year in property tax paid to the city. 2% increase. Their rate would stay the same, but the value of their home would go up 2% on average. The assessed value, the mayor mentioned, the growth is definitely slowing in our assessed value. In fiscal year 06, it was up 9.6%, and then last year it dropped to 7.8. I'm projecting this current year of 7.3, and then next year Joanna is helping me project a 5% growth. So we're definitely seeing a slowdown. Makes sense with the housing market in Urbana as well as other places.
Ron, if I could ask a quick question, can you explain to the public that how property tax too is also assessed on a moving average sort of fashion, as I understand it? You know,
well, you're talking about like when Joanna assesses once on average of once every 3 years.
Yeah, right.
You know, I cannot do that for you right now because I do not know all the particular details of the assessment process. Because up until maybe 4 years ago, the city really didn't pay much attention to the rate at all. We levied on a dollar amount. So our policy was that the dollar amount generated by the property tax would go up 3% or 4% or whatever the decision was made, and the rate floated. Sometimes the rate would go up, sometimes it might go down. It would depend. But then we changed that policy about 4 years ago, and we wanted to make a goal of matching Champaign's rate, which we've been able to do unless they throw us a curveball and then change it at the last minute. They'll tell us. But I'm not going to be able to tell you that, but I can get that information in some concise fashion and probably put that out on the web or come back later with something on that.
I guess it was just my understanding that because it's not, that there's a moving average sort of approach, so that even though property taxes or even though property values might be leveling off or even going down, the individual homeowner isn't going to see an immediate impact one way or the other because it's a multi-year averaging that is used by the assessor's office. And so, 1 year down but 2 years up is going to still keep you, it might on an average keep you up, sort of thing. So there's a So some people have asked me, well, why isn't my property tax going down this year? Well, that's because it's a moving average, is what I've been telling them.
I don't think it is a moving average. I think that the assessor bases it on sales. So it depends on the neighborhood that you're in. If sales have gone down, if the price of the homes in your neighborhood have gone down, then your assessment would probably go down too. But I'm not aware that it's a moving average.
Oh, I thought she used 3 years worth of data, and
I didn't know that.
Oh, okay.
Certainly, when we mention the 2% property growth on average, I mean, there are some property owners that are going to be above 2% in certain areas of town where the value of their home is, the properties are going up more. Those are offset by other properties in other parts of town that are below the 2%. And we have no way of knowing that, no way of controlling that. We cannot adjust the rates dependent on the value of your property goes up or down. State law does not allow that. So, I have had, people call and say, well, my property's gone up 5 and 6%, and you're telling me the average is 3. And it's true, their properties have gone up more than the average in Urbana. So, our total expenses in the general operating fund are up 6.2%. And how you might say, well, how can we have a balanced budget if the revenues are going up 4.5 and the expenses are going up 6.2? That difference is about $380,000, and the reason we're able to do that is the current year has a $380,000 surplus of revenues that exceed expenditures in the current year, fiscal year 08, right now, by $380,000. So we're starting with a higher revenue base and a lower expense base. So that, in effect, you could sort of think of it as using up fund balance, although it's really not fund balance. It's just really that we have more revenues that we're carrying over a higher base. Now, if we don't have that $380,000 next year, well, we're gonna have more of a problem, obviously. So I got my fingers crossed, that our revenues continue to be strong. This budget, even though it has a 6.2% increase in expenditures, it really is a pretty austere budget. You won't see many increases or changes in service levels, a few minor ones, but it's the same basic service levels that we've had in the past. And it does not add many FTEs. There's only one additional FTE being added in the entire budget, and that's quarter time in historic preservation, a quarter time in the arts intern, and a half time in a library shelver. So why is it going up 6.2 if we're not adding any personnel, we're not adding any new programs? Well, we've got significant cost increases. Most of them the mayor mentioned: employee insurance, employee pensions, employee bargaining agreements, the cost of fuel, fuel-related supplies such as asphalt, concrete, lighting supplies, utilities. All of these items were way above 10% for the last 2 years. So inflation is really hitting cities, municipalities very hard. The individual departments, police are up 5.4, fire 7.5, public works 6.1, library 6.3, and that equates to a 6.9% increase in the levy for the library. Our long-term projections, I did not do the chart with, I spared you the chart with the lines going apart, but basically here are the numbers that gives you an idea. If you look at the second line there, fiscal year 07, which is last year, actual numbers last year, we had revenues of $28.7 million. We had expenses of $27.5. So we had $1.2 million revenues over expenses that year. That was, you remember that we had the impact of Walmart, we had the impact of O'Brien's, we had the impact of the 0.25% sales, home real sales tax increase. All those really hit home. But then this current year, fiscal year 08, that surplus drops from 1.2 million down to 400,000 is my estimate. And then next year's budget, 09, the one we're looking at right now, will be basically balanced. And then if things do not change, if our revenues go up what I anticipate and I know, and our expenditures go up 5.5%, note that's less than the 6.2 it is this year, we'll have a $500,000 deficit that somehow we will have to deal with, either raising revenues somewhere, reducing costs. And if we're not able to balance that for some reason, then that quickly grows to 1.4 million and so forth. So quickly the timetable, tonight we have the overview. On May 27th, we had scheduled to have the largest departments, police, fire, public works, and others as time allows. Monday, June 2nd, we have a public hearing at 7 o'clock. We have the library and time for budget markup. And then also on June 9th, time for budget markup, and the budget then would be approved on June 16th, second meeting in June. So we'll have plenty of time to discuss, and in the meantime, if you have any questions or something you'd like, if you can email them to me, I will certainly get the questions and the answers to everybody.
No questions?
Yeah, I was glad to see in your presentation that you planned for a quarter-time historic preservation planner in CD. It looked like on page 22 when I read about the FTEs that wasn't there. It looked on page 22, I think it said half-time, a half FTE increase in the ED arts coordinator line, but there wasn't a historic preservation piece singled out there. So
That's I think that was really my mistake. It truly is. They are truly adding a quarter time to an intern that dedicated for historic preservation and an intern they've dedicated for arts.
Okay.
And so they're each going to 3/4 time, but it's just
okay. So that whole line is for all the interns.
I
That makes sense.
I suppose you
okay.
could argue one.
Okay.
Six of one, half a dozen of the other.
Thank you.
Other questions for Ron and the mayor? So I guess we'll proceed per the schedule as in past years. The fun begins. Thank you. Okay, next I think we have a couple of easy items. Up next is ordinance number 2008-05-038, an ordinance approving and authorizing the execution of an agreement with the State of Illinois Department of Agriculture for a farmers market advertising grant. Tom Carino.
Evening. You have before you an agreement with the Illinois Department of Agriculture for the expenditure of grant funds in the amount of $4,000 for television advertising for the Market at the Square through the Illinois Farmers Market Advertising Grant. As part of this agreement, the state is requesting an indemnification related to the materials produced, and because of that, the legal division recommended that the agreement be approved by City Council and executed by the mayor. Normally, a grant this size wouldn't need this type of approval, but because of that, legal is recommending.
Dennis.
I would make a motion that we advance ordinance number 2008-05-038 to City Council with approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Danielle?
I just have a question about this. It's my understanding, reading the Cable Franchise Act, that we can put PSAs for free on many different cable stations. And so I guess, and I know how much television costs, and so I guess I was trying to understand, I'm glad we got the grant, but I wondered why it was going to television advertising, and were we making use of the free PSAs across the commercial channels already, and how is this going to do anything more than buy us 4 ads, which is about what $4,000 will get us.
The reason it's solely for television advertising is because we've, in the past, we've explored and utilized other media. For example, we do radio, we do newsprint, we have done billboard in the past. Television was a media that we had not explored previously, and so we proposed to the state that this be specifically for television because it was a way of exploring a new media for the market. The reason that we've not done television advertising in the past, including the free use of PSAs, is that we didn't engage in the production of television materials. The former director was reluctant to engage even in the production of materials to then use as a PSA for free advertising. So our original proposal was for the production of ads and airtime. The state came back and said, well, we'll fund some airtime but not production. You'll have to do that on your own. So we will absorb production as part of the existing marketing budget, and then we will use the $4,000 for actual airtime on both cable networks and local networks.
Will we then also have pieces that we can use for the free PSAs?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay, that makes sense. And they kind of put it at awkward times, et cetera, so it makes sense to buy some airtime at prime time as well. But I just wanted to make sure we were leveraging all pieces. And of course, we can also then broadcast it on UPTV and should as often as possible. Otherwise, I support this.
Our current Market at the Square director, Lisa Braltz, was the former employee of the Eastern Illinois Food Bank, and there had a lot of expertise in leveraging free resources. So she has a lot of experience in leveraging everything she can with a limited budget. So we'll be sure to explore those options.
Okay, we have a motion to send this to council. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It goes to council. Next up is ordinance number 2008-05036, an ordinance annexing certain territory to the city of Urbana at 3010 East Windsor Road. Is the Illinois Power Substation out on Florida Avenue, or I'm sorry, Windsor.
You have before you a petition for annexation from Ameren IP for 3010 East Windsor, near the northwest corner of Windsor Road and High Cross Road, Illinois 130. This petition was preceded by an annexation agreement that was approved by City Council on April 21st, 2008. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Dennis.
As I recall reading this, one of the aspects of the agreement was that there would not be further specification about screening or landscaping the perimeter fence. Can you explain a little bit about that concept and what's the concern there? Because usually we would typically have utilities screened.
Sure. The Ameren has agreed to annex this property at our request. As such, they came to us and said, we're willing to do this, but we'd like to continue to operate the property as it's currently being operated. What we did was we did some historical research, and we found that the property is operating legally in the county based on a prior special use permit they received from the county 1974, I believe, in that area. And so we have agreed to mirror that same special use permit in order to make this transition as painless as possible for them, in that they're doing this at the city's request. So there are no additional screening requirements, but there are screening requirements in that original SUP that they have abided by. So they are required to do screening. We are just not asking them to do any additional screening. They're basically continuing to abide by that original special use permit that will transfer over in the city.
So then, is the screening that we see today the screening that is basically the special use permit screening that we would be accustomed to? Or?
What you see today is what will be required, but we have been in contact with them about additional screening, and they have not said they're opposed to that. The person I've been dealing with is, for the most part, a real estate person and is not so much involved in landscaping and screening. So that person had to check with other people and would get back to me, has not done so yet. Again, they're not opposed to doing additional screening, but it would not be required of them.
So I would encourage us to encourage them to screen.
Sure.
I move approval, sending this to council with recommendation for approval.
It's been moved and seconded to send this to council with a recommendation for approval. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Off to council it goes. The next item up is street lighting request for proposals. It's a motion to solicit from Public Works, and I'm going to turn the chair over to Danielle.
So we have a presentation from Public Works.
Sure do.
Thanks.
Joining me tonight to present this item is Tom Burtness from Burtness Engineering Services to answer questions. As a matter of information, in November and January of the last year and early this year, the Committee of the Whole discussed this issue of providing a uniform standardized lighting or street lighting system within the university district. And during that discussion, we discussed a lot of different options and items with respect to that. And we took that back to a technical committee of staff of the University of Illinois and City of Champaign, and Bill Gray was predominantly the Urbana staff member on this item. And they worked with Burtness Engineering Service to come up with a request for proposals for a pricing agreement for street lighting equipment. That would be a standard or a uniform street lighting system for the university district. Tom has prepared a draft proposal. It was attached to the memo. The executive summary of that was attached to the memo, along with some equipment information. And what we're asking for this evening is for this committee to approve the soliciting of the proposals from multiple vendors that provide this type of equipment. And in that RFP, we would be considering those items that this committee asked us to look at: the full cutoff and cutoff lighting fixtures. The pole designs would be similar to what has been established in the campus area now. And if I'd like let Tom add any items he would like to it, or respond to any questions the committee might have at this time.
Do you have additions? Go ahead.
I'd be happy to answer any questions. There really hasn't been a lot of development since our last discussion. Alderman Smythe pointed out an omission that I left out, the cutoff and full cutoff, and we're going to be adding that to the documents. There's a lot of boilerplate that will be going along with it. That's University of Illinois standard documentation that's not included here, just the basic turning in the proposal and so forth. And I guess the main point at this point is that we're not asking for any kind of a final approval. We're just asking for approval to go out and solicit for the proposals, and then we'll be bringing back the proposals at a future date for an actual approval at that time. So.
Okay. Any questions for staff? Lynn?
I don't have any questions.
Okay.
One additional comment. One of the reasons that we'd like to get this RFP out is that our Goodwin Avenue project, which is currently getting Phase 1 design and be going into final design probably the 1st of June, is very dependent upon making a decision what street lighting fixtures we need to get that information, that we want to use there. We need to get that information to our consultant doing that design. So it's fairly important that we get these solicitation for the RFPs out to the vendors so they can respond to us, and then we can make a timely decision on whether we agree with what those proposals might be to incorporate those fixtures into that project.
Okay. Go ahead, Lynn.
I'd like to make a motion to move forward with the RFP as attached with the change that, the edit that you mentioned.
Second.
We have a motion from Lynn and a second from Robert. Charlie, go ahead.
There's a person from the public who wants to speak. I have a demo and a couple of things I want to say. I would hope that we would hold off on this motion for a little bit because there's some real problems with this RFP, and I'd like to have a chance to point those out. I think they can be repaired in time to take this to count. I would like to see this not be a motion approved tonight, but a motion directing staff to fix the RFP and bring it back to us next week so that it can continue forward in a timely fashion. But I think we need to hear from a member of the public, and I would like to do my demonstration.
Okay.
And to talk about the different items I've got before you.
Okay. I apologize. Stuart Levy is present, would like to speak, and since we've heard from the staff, let's go ahead and hear from Stuart. He's at 1108 Folly Avenue in Champaign regarding the street lighting RFP.
Thanks for saving me that time. Yes, I'd seen, I guess, some of the documents related to this and was really alarmed to hear it talked about in terms of full cutoff, while both the description in this, the executive summary talks about a diffusing lens, and also the illustrations for the items that are to be bid in particular don't remotely resembling anything that anybody could call full cutoff. They're drop lens types. They look very much like the existing lighting fixtures in Green Street campus town, which might be nice in some places, but I think they would, not only are they not full cutoff, I think they'd be a terrible example to set as a universal one. So I urge you to look further at this before and not release these as requests for proposals as they stand.
Questions for Stuart? Thank you for your input. Go ahead, Charlie.
Okay, if I could call your attention first to, and a couple pages didn't get copied, but they're not important. Full cutoff lighting, the benefits. This is an article in the IESNA journal. It's several years ago, but it's a little bit of a historical discussion. But on page 56, which I think is the second page here, the middle page got left out, but it's small. I made some marks on the right-hand border here, and I'd like to call your attention. Mr. Poland says, it is difficult to conceive of a luminaire being classified full cutoff if it has anything but a flat lens which is parallel to the ground. Okay, and so what I'd like to do is demonstrate what happens here. Glass has a refractive index of between 1.4 and 1.5. No matter how clear it is, when you shine light through it, light gets bent and it gets reflected back up. Now the index or the reflectivity is a function of the refraction index, which is 1 minus n over 1 plus n, the quantity squared. And if you do that for glass, you put in the refractive index, it means that when light is going straight through glass, because it has to pass through two surfaces, the first surface and then the second surface, on either side of the piece of glass, you have to double the term, and so you end up with reflection at minimum of 6%. But because light doesn't enter just straight through, it scatters around. And I talked to a physicist last night about this. You're more likely to get about 8, 9, 10% reflection of light off of glass. And so I'd like to demonstrate that with this full cutoff light that I have in my hand. If I could get the lights down, please. The lights down. Okay, here's my pedestrian. Let's assume that he's 6 foot tall, and proportions right here. This is a full cutoff light.
You're challenging UPTV too.
This is a full cutoff light. The reason I'm doing it down here below your eyesight is you can't see light here in the horizontal plane. It's below the horizontal plane. That's what's important here. Okay, so full cutoff light is below the horizontal plane. Now watch what happens when I attach a round, not perfectly round, shot glass. Yes. Okay, watch what happens. There's two things that happen here. Okay, now you can see the light above the horizontal. Okay, I'm holding this below your, so any light that you're seeing is wasted. It's not on the roadway. Okay, and so now the further away I am from the light, the more reflection there is. As I bring it up closer, you can see there's less and less. And that's what the article means about the flat lens. Okay, so if you have anything drop down below the lens, this is full cutoff, right here, this part. But once you add the fixture at the end, you change all the characteristics. So it's really important that you specify the specifications for full cutoff are for the entire assembly. Okay. The other thing that happens here is because light is being reflected above the horizontal, you'll notice that with and without, without the cover, the light is brighter on the ground. When I add this, I lose about 10% or maybe more, depending on the shape and everything. So there's less energy being put on the ground. Energy is being wasted outward. Okay, so that's the importance of full cutoff. If you've got a full cutoff lighting, properly designed, there is no reflection above about 170 degrees. No, actually, the full cutoff is actually defined like this. There's a shape associated with it. So there's nothing wasted above, and that's really important. Okay, in all of this, and so it is, and since I'm a university employee and I've just gone through an RFP process, it is really important that in the RFP process you specify exactly what you want, okay? Because otherwise you're going to get in trouble with the state bidders, with the state, okay? There are very specific requirements for how you do an RFP with the university of this magnitude. And so it behooves us to remove the language from the third paragraph of this executive summary that says that we want functionality of the Champaign Green Standard lighting equipment that includes a picture that says that includes a picture of a light standard that has this huge drop-down lens, okay? And that we include in this place very clear specification that what we're after are poles that look like Campus Town, but with full cutoff specifications. And that needs to be in this third paragraph. And so I would ask is that we send this back to staff to fix this RFP, to fix the RFP. I've actually looked through the whole RFP. It's got pictures of all this non-cutoff lighting all the way through the examples. And so the examples need to correspond to what we really want, which is full cutoff lighting. Frankly, this is not ready to see the light of day, let alone the dark of night.
Okay. Dennis, then Lynn, then the mayor.
I wanted to ask a little bit about the choice of full cutoff lighting, or if there were. I'm assuming that it's the structure of the bowl at the bottom of the lamp that's making the diffused light. And one of the comments you had made earlier, Charlie, probably a couple months ago, was that there was too much bright glare coming out in the Campus Town area, and that what you need is a softer light that would be easier for night vision for cyclists and people who are driving cars. So what I'm wondering about is the aspect of if the bowl does diffuse the light somewhat to the side, wouldn't that also create a softer light that would infuse the area in a general way rather than have what looks to be like a very spotlighted effect, that you would have puddles of spotlighting all the way down the street? And wouldn't a more softer diffused light serve the safety area of the street a little bit better?
Who's your question for,
Charlie?
Okay, go ahead.
The issue here is that that if you look at all the studies, it's light comes down, and the reason it looks like it's spotlighting is because it's brighter without the cover. Okay, and you can design the cover. A lot of them have a slight little bit of a curve, but they're still done properly. There are a number of places that we have full cutoff lighting in the city in places. I think out here on Illinois Street, there's right at the intersection, there's some good examples of full cutoff lights. We've got cutoff or maybe full cutoff lighting in the Pines. Okay, and if you properly space things, you get light down where you want it. And in the diagram that I give there's a thing here about glare, cutoff and angles and glare. And in one of the other references that I gave in the longer paper, I actually showed 6 diagrams. I handed that out last time. There were 6 pictures of how light shines down from depending on what the shape is and where the bulb is. So light is light, okay? And if you diffuse it, what you're doing is sending it. If you send it above the horizontal, all of that light is wasted. It's wasted energy, and we can't afford to be wasting energy. That's the whole point here. A properly designed light fixture will get you uniformity across the ground. Okay, right now in Campus Town, everybody agrees, even Mr. Burton, his son last time, agreed that the lighting there is too bright. It exceeds the recommended level 4 for business residential mix substantially by the measurements that Gary Zico made. It's not only is it glare producing, it's not full cutoff. It's not even cutoff because you can see it from the parking garages and apartments way above the light fixtures. Okay, and it's full of glare. So it's polluting, it's wasting energy. We cannot afford to be wasting energy like that.
Lynn?
Maybe a question for you, Tom. Like with full cutoff lighting, can you get it to angle? When I'm biking, I don't like to have light gap, light gap, light gap. That's not comfortable to me. Then the more light down is fine, is good for me. I feel safer. I feel like it's easier to ride. It's easier to walk. So I have a question: can you get full cutoff lighting that does that? Do you have to have more lamps to make that happen? I guess is one question. And then what about the facade lighting? Are we concerned on Goodwin? It's Goodwin, right? Are we concerned on Goodwin? Because let's face it, on Green Street, there's a lot of nice facade lighting, which is helpful for businesses. You drive by, oh, there's that restaurant. I want to go there. You need to see the signage. You need it at night. And so on Goodwin, would we have a similar concern in parts of that area? And if we make this change, as Charlie's suggesting, will that cause some problems with that?
Is this a device that I could show? Can somebody make this thing work here? The first part of your question, can you get full cutoff that isn't just like the flashlight pointing down? The answer is yes. However, it is more narrow. Full cutoff lighting is excellent and is excellent for primarily roadway use. In other words, you're just trying to light the roadway. For example, on Philo Road, we are trying to make that more pedestrian friendly, but our pedestrian load there is very low. So we are going to use full cutoff fixtures there. The pedestrian load is, less than 100 per hour. Now in the University District, we are concerned primarily with our pedestrians and our bicycles. Okay, so our prime design criteria in the University District is pedestrian. It isn't vehicular. So we need to look at solutions to the need for pedestrian lighting there, which is different than just simply lighting a roadway straight down, which is what full cutoff fixtures are for. So what we did when we did the Campus Town work, when we began studying that, as a matter of fact, the City of Champaign spent about $100,000 just on the preliminary design to optimize the fixture for that location. It wasn't just a quick pick. And what we did was we looked at the need for the pedestrian lighting. And the IES standards address this, and the technical term is vertical illumination. In other words, you don't want to just light the roadway, but if you're in a pedestrian environment, you want that person's face to be lit. Okay, that's 6 feet, 5.5 to 6 feet above the ground. And you need illumination that hits that person's face, not just falls on top of their head. As a matter of fact, in a poorly designed full cutoff installation, you just have the top of the head, and that makes the features invisible, and that's not good. So what we look for is to add enough vertical illumination to provide as the soft light or the lack of light dark that you're describing. And so the fixture that we pick actually provides a little bit of vertical illumination. Now, what we try to do is eliminate as much as possible the uplight that Alderman Smythe is talking about. We don't want that uplight. However, if we're going to get light going to the side to provide vertical illumination, inevitable consequence is is a little bit of light going up. So this is the actual photometric distribution curve for the top fixtures that we're talking about here that are in the RFP and that are used currently on Green Street in the campus town. And if you can read this, it doesn't look like it's in very good focus, but this is the lumen distribution expressed in percentage. And it's 400 high-pressure sodium. And this number right here, I don't know if you can see it there, but it's 1.3%. In other words, all the light from 100 degrees above vertical, here's vertical, between 100, the entire sphere on top, gives 1.3%. The bottom 10 degrees from 90 degrees, which is horizontal, up the next 10 degrees is 0.8%. So this fixture provides a 2.1% uplight factor. The definition for full cutoff is 0% above horizontal. Okay, so we are at 2.1%. The definition of cutoff is 0 to 20%. So we are well within the cutoff definition. We're very close to a full cutoff definition with this fixture. However, if we were to eliminate, which we can do, we can have full cutoff fixtures that don't have this 2.1% of uplight. We could eliminate that, but it would eliminate the vertical illumination that we design into the system so that we have a secure environment, so that a person can recognize facial features on a person who's walking on the sidewalk 10 and 20 feet in front of them. Okay, so yes, it's true, we have a little bit of uplight. We do. It's 2.1%. Okay. Now, this isn't true of the lower fixtures out there. The lower pedestrian fixtures have a glow top on them, and they throw a lot of light up there, and we've talked about those in some of our discussions, and we could eliminate that glow top for those fixtures anywhere we want. I don't have the percentage of uplight from those, but it's a significant number. So I don't know if that answers your question, but the vertical illumination also has to do with the facades. Now, the reason we use those glow tops in campus town was to light the building facades, and the decision that hadn't been discussed previously was that we wouldn't use those glow tops out of those kind of central commercial districts where we wanted to light the front of the buildings. Does that answer your question?
Other comments? I have a couple of questions before we get to comments, just for clarification. These, I think, are for Tom, which is, what's the relationship between the energy savings of what is being proposed in the RFP and what's there currently, or what is in Campus Town versus what was there before? What is the kind of relationship of energy savings? Did we increase the energy because we're increasing the number of poles, or exactly how does that factor?
One of the design criterion for the center part of Campus Town was to to raise the foot candle level above the IES standards, as was mentioned. And the reason for that was because this was going to be highly dense pedestrian traffic. It's central business district, and the whole idea was to draw the students down to Central Campus so they'd spend money, and that's what happened. You know, Campus Town was in incredible financial decline. We did all that work, and now it's thriving again, and, you know, buildings being built all over the place. It's just, it's a transformation. Part of that was the conscious decision to light it higher than IES levels. However, I have been directed in terms of the planning stages to light the rest of the campus area in accordance with IES standards as opposed to exceeding it by a factor of 2 or 3. So there's going to be an energy savings relative because we are going to be putting in, you know, a third to a half of the lighting level. It's the same equipment, though. Okay, there isn't a proposal for more energy efficient lighting because when we made the original picks, we went into great detail to design the equipment to put the light exactly where we wanted it and to be as efficient as absolutely possible in doing that task. In other words, we're doing more tasks than just lighting the roadway.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it costs energy to do those tasks.
Okay, so in Goodwin and Nevada, which is the areas we're talking about lighting in Urbana, basically we could anticipate better lighting, which we want, and an increase in energy use at that location with this project?
Of course, the definition of better lighting is, you know, up to the individual defining that. We could anticipate lighting of a lower level, a lower illumination level, because it's going to be closer to IES standards.
Okay.
But it's going to also provide, if we use this equipment, the vertical illumination that is pedestrian friendly.
Okay. But we anticipate, this is a question for you, Carol, we anticipate an increase in our energy use as a result of this project? Or is the technology such that we're realizing an energy savings due to higher efficiency lighting equipment?
Maybe I didn't explain it well or not at all earlier. When these requests for proposals are going out and the vendor is being asked to provide us with an equipment that will do certain things, and our proposals, the staff is going to evaluate them and bring a recommendation back to council based on these proposals we receive, and those evaluations are going to be based on energy usage, LEED applicability, and operation and manufacturing costs. There's a lot of that. That's what staff is going to evaluate and bring to you. It is not our intent to recognize something that's going to use a lot more energy. It's our goal to reduce the energy usage in this whole process and in evaluation as part of the staff evaluation. This same issue is also going to the university and Champaign City Council at this time also to endorse sending out these RFPs. The RFPs are for us to get information. It'll be real easy to add a requirement for the vendors to provide fixtures that provide cutoff and full cutoff fixtures in their proposal back to us. Then staff from the three entities will get together with our consultant and we'll evaluate all these and we'll bring recommendations to the council for final action. All this action we need tonight is to authorize sending out the RFPs. We want to make sure we get everything in it that the council wants. So it's very easy to change that and add the full cutoffs and any other items that might be required or desired by council to that RFP.
And to give a specific answer to your question, what will happen eventually if these lights are installed, these will be replacing existing tall poles that are out there that have higher wattages. So there should be an overall wattage reduction from what is present to what these will be, because these are much more efficient than the existing ones that are out there.
Okay. So we have a motion on the table. Okay, with the clarification and language. Go ahead, Charlie. Or I'm sorry, Mayor. I skipped you. Mayor and then Charlie.
Can you tell me what the percentage difference would be between the existing system? I mean, how much energy savings are you roughly expecting? 10% or 5% or 50%?
Well, because I haven't gone out there and done a survey of the existing wattages of the fixtures, I think they're 250 watts a piece, and we're talking about, these are going to be probably 150. So, it could be.
It could be 50%.
It could be, yeah.
But you're not going to have more lights, you're going to have the same number of poles roughly?
That has to be calculated based on, we don't want the dark light, we want the good uniformity. And right now, they're using the shot glass type lenses to throw a tremendous amount of light sideways and a lot of glare, and we want to eliminate, we want to reduce that as much as possible.
And Gail, you wanted to respond to that question?
One of the things that Bill and I have talked about is, as part of our deliberations, we're going to look at this equipment, and we're going to, our goal is to get the maximum energy savings we can get and yet provide the desired and required lighting for the campus area.
Okay, Charlie, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I think this is a bit disingenuous because the glare bombs that have been attached to both types of lighting, both the upper and the pedestrian level, they look pretty. I think this is just a justification to use a particular style. Okay, because as long as a light fixture is higher than the surfaces and objects to be illuminated, such as people's faces, eliminating light above 90 degrees from the nadir, from straight down, does nothing to reduce vertical illumination. It can be demonstrated using basic principles of geometry that no light traveling in a straight line above 90 degrees can provide any illumination, vertical or horizontal, to persons and objects below it. On the contrary, a cutoff fixture that is located higher than the surface or object to be illuminated provides more vertical and horizontal illumination than a non-cutoff fixture using the same light source at the same height, because the cutoff fixture directs all of its light below 90 degrees to illuminate the objects and people at the same height to the side and below. All the light in Campustown and Urbana's residential streets would provide more vertical and horizontal illumination to the street, sidewalk, and parkway areas if they were mounted in properly designed cutoff fixtures, such as those approved by the International Dark Sky Association. You can go to their website, they can show you how to design, and they can show you the fixtures that let you have your cake and eat it too here. I provided a lot of references to cutoff and full cutoff examples and definitions before. You've got to be careful not to confuse uniformity issues with the distribution of light. A properly designed full cutoff fixture provides light in a 160-degree sweep below it, with a reduction to 10% of total light output in the last 10 degrees below the horizontal. Okay, so that's sort of along these lines, and there's none. So it's 160 degrees, that 80 and 80 on each side, that's important. So to control light trespass problems, the Illuminating Engineering Society of North America makes the recommendation, and I quote, to select luminaires with tightly controlled candela distributions using sharp cutoff reflectors and refractors. Okay, what we need to put in this RFP is the effect that we want to have, okay, and that we want to use full cutoff and cutoff fixtures as much, to achieve a certain illumination level and a certain coverage area, and let the designers come up with that. It's not our responsibility to light university buildings, okay? It's not our responsibility to light the facades of businesses. We can encourage businesses to provide downward lighting, properly designed full cutoff lighting along their faces, okay, mounted on their buildings. We should not be providing the lighting by creating glare bombs that light their facades. So it's in the way you design this, you can use full cutoff and cutoff lighting, and the RFP does not say that. Okay, and that's what it needs to say, because if we don't put it here now, we're going to get stuck with something for 50 years that is light polluting and wasteful of energy.
Okay, Brendan, you had a hand up.
Yeah, well, Gail, you had kind of, what you said previously, if I understood it, was that we could ask for full cutoff in the RFP, and the respondents would provide information about that option as part of their submittal to the RFP. And then we can weigh these things when we see the exact photometrics or see the exact design. Did I understand that right?
This is a joint effort by three entities, the University of Illinois, City of Champaign, and the City of Urbana. And we can put the requirement for full cutoff or cutoff or whatever we'd like to ask for in the RFP. Again, there are three entities that are soliciting this proposal, so, we got to, and I don't think that the City of Champaign or University would object to the full cutoff requirements for the fixtures. I don't want to, I'm speaking for them, and probably shouldn't, but I don't believe, I think their intent is, at least from what I've observed, the same goals that we have, is to be energy efficient and not create any light pollution, and to do it in a manner that creates a uniform fixture for the campus area. So I think we can ask for that. We can put it in the RFP. We can draft the appropriate language, and if we so desire.
Lynn?
So what you're saying, Gail, is that this proposal that you got in front of us, adding the words full cutoff only, that would be the only change, would meet that goal?
I believe that it would, yes. I haven't asked U of I, and I haven't asked the City of Champaign, but
right.
I believe, yes.
So the only change that you guys are recommending is just what you had mentioned in your your discussion.
I was hearing the word cutoff and full cutoff. Okay, the full cutoff is the 0.
Right.
And ours are
2.1. So that way we would have some discussion about that when it comes back.
You could ask for both if you wanted to. The vendors could provide you fixtures doing both.
That's good.
We could evaluate what they're providing, and make a recommendation to council. If council doesn't like what our recommendation is, they could.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. That gives us options.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
And we can require them to submit the numbers.
That's good. Yeah, that way we'll be able to see kind of a demonstration of what they recommend and what kind of light it would be shed.
Okay, Robert, you had a hand up.
I think just to solve this problem, I think just easily add the cutoff fixtures and the two options and go out to the RFPs and have them send the information back and let staff do their evaluation.
And give us a recommendation based on their work with the other cities.
That's simple, yes.
Charlie?
I think unless we get it in writing as the RFP, as the executive summary, whatever we say tonight isn't going to have any impact on Champaign and the university. I mean, they've got to agree to put in the language properly. It's got to go through channels. This is not ready for approval. If you want full cutoff and you want some design, take it back to them and bring it back to council next week. Yep. This isn't ready. We can't just on the fly tell the university in Champaign to include the words full cutoff and cutoff here. Okay, the problem here is that in all of the examples, and I read through all the documentation shows these pictures of the existing campus town lighting, and it is bad lighting. Okay, it may achieve what is desired in the area of lots and lots of bright light. Okay, but it is wasteful. It is light polluting. We can't afford to be wasting energy. Okay, and properly designed, we basically should just ask for full cutoff. My idea was full cutoff at the top, and I'm willing to go to cutoff at the pedestrian level because that's a little trickier. Okay, where you get all your spacing, and if you try to use the same poles that you're doing your upper lighting and have some pedestrian lighting, it's probably a little harder to get full cutoff at the pedestrian level. I will concede that, because if you want to be efficient in placing your poles. Okay, but there are lots of good examples of light now that control the distribution of full cutoff lighting, that control the distribution, give you extra on the sidewalk, and give you different distributions out at angles and so on. There are fixtures out there that will get you the kind of illumination that you want, proper and uniform. Okay, it doesn't need to be this very elegant, elaborate bowl that sits under these lights that totally ruins the cutoff aspect of the actual device itself. If you took those bowls off and put a flat lens on those upper lights in Campus Town, you'd have full cutoff. Okay, but but they may not be quite the right design up in there to throw the light out the way you want. So it has to be properly designed up at the top. So you need to include the word full cutoff from the beginning to get what you really want in this RFP. And I just can't see approving this without having the final language in front of me and the art.
So can we scale the question, which is, can we ask for you to bring a proposed revision back next week at council that has language that adds the issue of cutoff as one of the criteria that we're considering?
I believe that we could do that by next week and even run it by Champaign and University to make sure that they don't have any issues with it. I don't believe they will. I think they're interested in the same things that we are. Our original goal was to get a uniform appearance, and so we can work on that.
So Brandon, go ahead.
And in addition, as part of, as you're thinking about those revisions, Charlie makes a good point that the current diagrams and pictures are a little confusing because they have such a shot glass style, bowl below them. It might be helpful just as part of the wording when you're adding the concept of cutoff to our criteria to see if it's possible to add a note or something that, by the way, the attached pictures don't show a full cutoff or don't show a design that had any lead criteria, and so the submittal might be different than the exact picture shown in that respect.
Well, let me clarify.
Yeah.
The pictures that are shown in there is this that I showed you that is 2.1%.
It's cutoff.
Uplight. It is a cutoff. Right. Cutoff goes up to 20%, and this is 2.1%. So those are cutoff fixtures. They are so well designed that they don't look like cutoff fixtures.
And what's good about them is that they match. They come close to matching the design of what's already there, and continues the effect of the campus look. So to me, we kind of get both. We get the look, and we get almost full cutoff by 2%.
So can we have a motion on the table so we can move forward with this?
There is a motion.
There is a motion.
There's a motion to go as is, but that's different than the proposal I've heard from at least 4 council members to see if we want to include some language about cutoff in the RFP.
I'll withdraw my motion if the seconder will.
Okay.
And then I'd like to make is that all right? Seconder, whoever it is. And then I would like to make a new motion to direct staff to go back and make wording changes in the proposal, RFP, that reflects the interest in having choices, cutoff and full cutoff, but to leave the pictures as a design recommendation based on the fact that it matches the lighting that's already there, and to also have conversation with other city, like Champaign University, to make sure we're moving down the same path.
Okay. So we have
That's
a
my
motion. Is there a second? So Robert is our seconder, Lynn is our motioner, Charlie.
Okay. I think we're getting very close to what I think will work. The aspect of this that bothers me is actually the upper lights are nowhere near as bad as the lower lights. The pedestrian level lights they're nowhere near cutoff. They're not even semi cutoff. They're just glare bombs. And so, I think we can have, and in talking to Bill Gray today, it's the poles are very important, that we have uniform poles, because that gives us a uniform look and feel. Okay, the fixtures are, they make things pretty if they were all be the same, but it may be that, some of those existing fixtures could be converted to whatever the new style is. And so I would prefer that we try to get the upper lights to be full cutoff, so that we don't have a lot of because those are very bright lights. So that's a lot of light being put out. 2-3% of those, because they're so bright above, is more than I really want to see. I'd like to see us really get to a full cutoff at those upper lights, because I think it's very doable. And then it's the pedestrian level lights, which I think can be allowed to be cut off as opposed to full cutoff. And so I'm more interested in really requiring the upper lights to be full cutoff in this motion. And I think it's important to make a distinction between the poles, which could be uniform. And so in the pictures, you say we want poles like this, which are already out there, but the heads could be different, or the fixture at the top and at the pedestrian level could be different because we want to get to this full cutoff and cutoff level lighting.
And I could word the RFP to include that as an option.
Yeah, options.
If that's the way the RFP is worded,
Options.
so we can look at those options and understand that there's a design involved in setting this up. We want a good design, too. It's not just the fixture, it's how they're laid out, and how the creating that uniform lighting and the whole bit. So the lighting design is what we're really after. What exactly do we want to light? How much light trespass do we want to allow? All those sorts of things. And I think we can. And it's the modern lighting. With LED strips in places. We can put LED stuff on facades. Okay, and get the nice design at the street level that we want, and still have full cutoff. Okay, so there are lots of different ways of doing this and getting what we want. So if your motion includes including a number of options, including full cutoff at the top and standard light poles, and trying to get to at least cutoff at the pedestrian level, I can support that.
Okay, just to summarize what I hear so far, I don't hear that there's consensus that we want full cutoff lighting, or that so you've put forward a vision of what you want. I don't hear consensus on that. What I do hear consensus on is that we would like to be able to weigh full cutoff in the set of options that comes back from the RFP.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Right. Options.
So, there's a motion, now a new motion on the table. Is there discussion on that? Brandon.
And to just clarify further, that one of the options we could request, kind of like Tom and Charlie had said, would be a full cutoff at the top and a cutoff at the pedestrian level as one option that we'd ask them to propose an example of.
Okay.
Right.
Other discussion?
That's included,
Okay. I just want to briefly comment. My opinion on the issue, I think, is very different than Charlie's, except for when it comes to energy efficiency. I think we're totally on the same page. So I just want to give staff the perspective that I think Campus Town looks great. I've gone there more often than ever before because of the lighting. I feel safe in a way that I don't feel safe in other parts of town. As a woman walking alone, I'm usually by myself. It's usually 1 o'clock in the morning. I appreciate that kind of lighting. I want to be able to see people's faces. I support that businesses have some illumination. I do think that in Campus Town, there's areas that feel like it's a lot, maybe we went overboard, but in terms of the safety, I think that's good. Now, my big concern is that energy costs are rising so much and we are putting something in place that's 50 years down the line, and we have to be thinking multiple generations, and we have to be knowing that energy costs are going to only rise. So I think energy costs is very important to me, but safety, I think that this issue of cutoff, full cutoff, I actually find these kinds of lights incredibly ugly, and I don't like the flat top look, and I don't like the boxy look to things. So this is not actually what I would like to see in a new business Krannert Center environment. I like the globes. I like a particular style, and I like the continuity of style. So I just want to put it out there that this, I really appreciate the work that's been done, and I think there's an aesthetics difference. I don't have concerns about light pollution in dense urban environments. I do have concerns about light pollution in rural environments where there are animals and people, and so wild animals need to have habitat, and I don't really see Campus Town as a wild animal habitat, so I don't have
Some people would disagree with you.
But I do know, I do acknowledge that there's an aesthetic difference and that some people really are concerned about the dark skies issue. It's just, to me, safety and women being able to feel safe walking by themselves and not having to have male accompaniment all the time is really important to feeling like it's a good city to live in. And so for that reason, this is the kind of direction, Campus Town is the kind of direction I'd like to see us go in. And I do support us having options, so I will move forward with this particular motion.
Yeah, the thing is, you look at this room, it's well lit, okay, but it's full cutoff because there's a roof here. There's no light leaking above. I have no problem with you lighting Campus Town to whatever level you want, even to dangerously bright levels at night, as long as it doesn't bleed up high. And that can be done. You can have properly designed, that's my whole point here, is that you can have properly designed full cutoff lighting, and you have, it's just a matter of where you put it, how high you put it, okay, and stuff like that. So this is full cutoff lighting. There's nothing leaking into the sky. And here we are. We have turned night into day. Okay, that's what you want. That's perfectly doable with full cutoff lighting. And there's no reason you can't have full cutoff lighting and the lighting level that you want. That's the whole point of all this research that I've spent months doing and providing you. Go to the Dark Sky Association's website and look at their examples. They've got their example after example after example. Toronto, Canada has all these wonderful pedestrian areas that are being lit in this way.
I'd like to call a question.
Okay. I believe that takes a vote, is that correct? Okay, all those in favor of calling the question, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, so we now have motion on the table. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed? That carries. I'll pass the chair back over to Charlie.
Thank you.
If I can find the agenda here. Okay, here we go. Okay, next up is another lighting thing. Ordinance number 2008-05037, an ordinance revising the annual budget ordinance Area 4B street lighting project. Gail?
This project is the next one in a series of projects to replace all the old series street lighting throughout the city. The series street lighting is obsolete, and you can't get parts for it, and we need to change. It's not very energy efficient, so we need to change it. This area has been in the CIP for a couple of years. We were going to work on it last year. We bid it last fall, and the bids came in way over what we had, quite a bit over what we had in the budget. There are various reasons, but probably the biggest reason is the increase in material prices and fuel and things like that contribute to construction costs. And we had to use some of this money to repair some emergency situations with the series street lighting in that area. When they did the Philo Road project, we had to reroute a circuit that was damaged by, or was going to be damaged by that road construction. So we spent some money out of that budget line item. Increased prices, bids were higher. We rebid it in April, 23rd. The bids were around $120,000 or $110,000 over our estimate. We're asking for a budget amendment for $120,000, which would allow for us to award that contract to Champaign Signal Lighting. I would note that some of the lights out there have just failed this spring, and we have some serious problems with equipment that you can't get, so we really need to proceed with this project. The fiscal impact is that the capital improvement plan has this $120,000 included in next year's cash flows, so it is being included in next budget year in the capital improvement plan, assuming that it's reflected in the budget. So our recommendation is that this ordinance revising the annual budget ordinance for the area, street lighting area, 4B area, be approved.
Okay, Lynn.
I'd like to recommend we move ordinance number 2008-05037 forward to council for approval.
It's been moved and seconded by Robert Lewis. Brandon?
I just had a question, Gail. I do appreciate that you all went back out to bid and tried to scale this down and figure it out. Still $120,000 is so big a number given all these competing priorities in the CIP. I just wonder whether you'd had any conversations about a way to phase it over 2 years or prioritize streets or prioritize sections. I'm not familiar with this exact area and what streets need lit, and I don't know, maybe Lynn or the mayor who kind of live in that neighborhood could speak to it more.
This is the Yankee Ridge School area south of Colorado, between Anderson and actually it's between Vine Street and Ray Street and Philo Road. And
yeah, these particular poles, I've had comments from constituents about the shape of these poles, and they're rusting out at the bottom, and actually they've been on this list to do for many years, and we've not been able to get to them.
Laurel?
They're all hooked together in series, so if you can't really phase them in, I don't think. You'd have to do all at once, is that correct? Or could you?
There are different circuits down there. All the poles are in very bad shape. I've been talking to the residents in that area for 2 years about, they're asking when we're going to replace them. They're not spaced as closely as we would normally space street lightings. We're going to replace the lights where they're at, so we're not going to increase the number of lights. We're in the same number in there down there. So, and it's time to replace them. We're just going to have more problems with them. To phase it in and defer it a year, I'm afraid with the increased costs that we've been seeing, it's just going to cost more to defer it, and we have the money in the CIP to do it now.
Did the bids go up when you rebid it?
No, actually, we had took a part of the work out and rescoped it, so the total number went down, but actually some of the unit prices went up just in waiting that 6 months or so.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, I have a quick question for you, and would like to have another motion to add after this one as well. The lighting fixtures themselves, are they cut off, full cut off? What are we actually using there?
They're similar to the same fixtures we've used on Washington, and we just put up in the Weber Street area. They're cut off fixtures.
They're cut off. Yeah. Okay. Do you know what the percentage is above?
You know, we're revisiting the fixtures because the ones we used are no longer furnished by the company we're buying them from. So I'm still looking at that. We're asking for full cut off is what we're asking for.
Okay, that's wonderful. In light of that, when this motion passes, I'd like to also include a lighting policy sense of the council motion that would add to some of the stuff we've been doing since we are going to be doing an increasing number of lighting projects, and I think it'd be important to get this out. So any further discussion on this particular ordinance? Seeing none, all those in favor of sending this to council?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. Now, as part of the lighting policy stuff that we were talking about earlier, I wanted to introduce this lighting policy sense of the council motion. I could bring this back in a couple of weeks, or we can, while people were thinking of it, and given what Gail has just said about going after full cutoff, I think it makes sense. I'm basically saying that immediately we want to have all current and planned city lighting projects to conform to LEED lighting standards, which is what's going to be included in the RFP, and be at the minimum designs of cutoff or full cutoff. And that immediately that we add specific LEED lighting standards to the Sustainable Urbana reports that the Sustainable Urbana Commission can help develop the following medium and long-term goals. And under medium term is to develop effective, efficient, economical, and ecological lighting ordinances and policies that incorporate LEED lighting compliance and encourage the use of low-energy solutions such as LED bulbs for future developments as well as current and future lighting projects. And long-term, staff time permits and as technology and city needs develop, to develop a multi-year phase-in of energy-saving compliant lighting for all current lighting in the city of Urbana, public and private. And this is a sense of the council motion mostly to help guide us in our lighting discussions in the future and to add some stuff to the Sustainable Urbana report so that we include that in our thinking as we move towards sustainability. So this is my sense of the council motion. I'd like to move it. Dennis.
Hey, well, Charlie, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
And your suggestion right now is concerning a discussion we can have for adopting basic lighting standards for the future. It's not attached to these motions that we're making.
No, it's not, but I wanted to include it since we were talking about lighting, I wanted to get this, another sense of the council motion, since it sort of went along with the RFP and with this lighting. I wanted to get this out there, even though it's not quite an agenda item. It's a sense of the council motion to get the ball rolling along these lines. That's all I know. And since the Sustainable Urbana report is out there, and we're going to get a Sustainable Urbana Commission going, and we're asking them to. I wanted to include lighting and the concept of LED which is included in the.
Okay,
university-
I understand.
Yeah, so
Thank
that's
you.
why. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it's totally appropriate to have discussion about sustainable Urbana and also energy efficient lighting. I think we ought to have that. So, yeah, I agree. I think what you got to do is bring to us a proposal.
Well, this is my proposal.
Well,
but if you don't want to do it now,
Yeah.
I don't feel like I want to do it now.
Okay, so.
I agree.
Okay, so I would like this.
I'd appreciate hearing about it in the future.
Okay, I would like this on committee in 2 weeks, then, please. Okay, moving.
May I make a quick comment? When we're looking at policies and goals for street lighting and setting standards, I think we want to be careful not to set hard and fast standards with the changing in technology, because you want to set goals for what we want to accomplish. I think that's great, but I don't, from a staff perspective, I would like to have some latitude to use and engineering judgment to bring something to council that might not be just strictly tied, but a pure policy or a standard.
Next up is item for discussion, amending the schedule of fees, lower restaurant caterer liquor license fees. This is from Mayor and Finance.
Well, I was talking with a restaurant owner who pointed out that they have to pay as much as a liquor store, which doesn't seem quite right. And I talked to Ron Eldridge about it, and if we changed it, which was my recommendation to lower it to $1,000 below bars and liquor stores for restaurants, because less of their business is dealing with alcohol, and it seems like sort of basic fairness. But there is a problem that there are 10 restaurants, so that would cost us $10,000. Ron had a good idea, which was to, instead of lowering it $1,000 this year, lower it $500, and then another $500 next year, so that would be a $5,000 reduction. And also, the people who have there's only actually one who has a caterer's license right now, but they also have a license as a restaurant. So I thought maybe have that be $350 instead of $765, which is actually going to go up to $799. So those are two proposals. And Ron has drawn up an ordinance. If you like this idea, you could send the ordinance to the council or delay it for the next committee meeting, since we didn't have we sent out the ordinance, but it's not on the agenda.
Ron, how does that work? Does it matter? Can we send this to council if we want?
I'm sorry, how does what work? I'm not trying to-
Well, we've labeled it for discussion, but there is an actual ordinance in the packet that was provided to the public. Can we send it to council? I mean, this is,
yeah.
Yeah, it's coming from
yeah.
last week anyway.
Yeah, okay, so that's fine. Lynn?
I'd like to make a motion to forward this on to council with a recommendation for approval.
Second.
It's been moved by Lynn, seconded by Robert. I have a quick question. How do these numbers compare to Champaign? I don't know if Ron knows those, or...
Our numbers are higher than Champagne's.
Yeah, does this,
But we
this brings...
adjust ours.
Yeah, I know, we adjust them, but this brings us down a little bit too, though, then, right?
Yeah, I don't know exactly what their license for restaurants are, but they're undergoing a big study right now of all their license fees. So their staff is anticipating a recommendation to increase their fees substantially all up and down the line, because they've not increased them for a number of years.
Well, maybe we should wait till we see what they do.
We can only change it.
Huh? Brandon?
Yeah, I couldn't quite tell. It looked like the mayor's sort of second idea in the memo about specifying that fees from the festival license go to public arts is... Oh, okay.
Okay, there's a motion to send the ordinance proposed by the mayor and finance to council. Is there any further discussion? Oh, Tom.
Sorry, I've done a little bit of basic research on comparing versus Champaign, and I don't have exact figures, but their liquor license fees are based on a different system. They have a base fee, but then they also add additional fees based on capacity of the establishment. So theirs is a system where if it's a larger establishment, the fees will in effect be larger. And again, I don't know the specifics, but it's based on a base plus capacity. So.
Yeah, I know it's confusing it's comparing apples to oranges. Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of sending this to council?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We'll see this next week. Next up is discussion of liquor ordinance revision where the fees go to Public Arts Commission. Mayor?
Yeah, that was my intention, but it didn't get written in the ordinance that was presented, that was passed last week. So I would like to change item 6, add a section C to specify that the fee based on the 5% of the gross revenue should go to the Public Arts Fund. That was the whole point of this ordinance, was get some funding for public arts.
And similarly, this could go to council from here as well if there is a motion.
Second.
Been moved by Robert and seconded by Danielle to send this to council. Danielle?
I have a related question. It's actually for Ron. It's come to my attention that by Illinois law, a license cannot go to a for-profit entity that doesn't have a physical space in the city of Urbana. It can only go to a nonprofit. It's related to so I support if money comes in going to the Public Arts Fund, but I'm not sure if this is going to fly from the state perspective. Do you have any update on that?
I had discussions with the two gentlemen that want to put on this festival in June. The temporary liquor license can go to individual entities that have liquor licenses already. Let's just put it that way. These guys will not be able to pass muster. We checked. I intend to call and check myself, but I've been told so far that the Illinois State Liquor Commission will not license them. The question will be, is that going to be a requirement for them to be able to put on their festival? In other words, would the state consider them, if they just use our local liquor ordinance, to be out of compliance with state law?
So just to follow up, so my concern is that this festival isn't going to happen because they aren't going to be able to get their liquor license, and
there's a plan B.
Okay, and what's that plan B?
Plan B is they're going to have an entity that does have a liquor license.
Not for profit.
To be able, I'm sorry, Mary.
Will it be not for profit or for profit?
Yeah. It'll be not for profit. They already have a liquor license, so they'll be able to serve the alcohol at the event for them.
Okay.
They will be the entity that has the liquor license will be the one who actually will apply for and be granted the city's temporary license.
So we won't get 5% gross revenues on the whole festival anymore. We'll just get it on that one portion.
We're still negotiating that with them right now. Their intent is still to have to pay money to go towards this, and we're trying to negotiate right now what that's going to look like, because they've had a number of, I won't call them setbacks, but changes. For instance, having to change location. Mm-hmm. They intended to have it at Broadway and Main, but the construction is doing there, so they're trying to negotiate at a different location. So there's a number of things that they're trying to go through for my conversations with them today in order to try to work around those things.
Mayor?
I would like to comment that the ordinance does not apply to them. We're negotiating with them. The clause in the ordinance was it accepts people that we had already started negotiations with. But this is for the future.
Yeah.
Which would presumably include them at some point, too.
Okay, further discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor of sending this to council?
Aye. I'm sorry. I wanted to be clear. There were other issues that were part of discussion that we were intending to have here, and I want to make sure that that there are no other changes. I speak specifically, Ms. Chenoweth had some questions about or not questions, but wanted to talk about the percentage, and I think there were some other individuals that had some issues that came up, and what was decided the last time this was before you was that we would pass the version that was there, and then we would revisit these issues. So I'm okay with you guys sending it as is with the change that the mayor has made, but I wanted to make sure that all of your issues were addressed before I bring a final draft.
Well, Brandon.
I mean, I think this change is great, and I support it, and we should still do the follow-up that we talked about doing last time, I think, which is just having that conversation about how does T3 apply to events like beer and chili, or does it, or maybe now that the state thing is the case, people will still have to partner with the UBA or some not-for-profit to do these events anyway, so they're covered, they're already part of, yeah.
They're an entity that already exists and has a business and already has a liquor license. So if they can get a T3 license now, they can get this new temporary license without having to go to the UBA.
Yeah, so I think the strategy of before was let's pass this now, let's get this done, and then we'll still have these conversations about how this applies to other situations and other festivals. And
Well, I think the whole issue is we're waiting for an actual separate festival ordinance that Ron is going to draft. I don't know what your timetable is on that or what you've worked out with the mayor, but
There really was no timetable because at this point, there's not a plethora of festivals in the wings waiting to go on. So I hadn't really set a timetable yet because we don't know. I didn't have an idea of what it should look like exactly. And then basically, I need to talk to people like the guys that are doing blues and brews and barbecue and beer and chili, and continue talking with UBA about sweet corn, because what I don't want to do is create a new ordinance that is unworkable and unwieldy for the people who really want to put these festivals on.
Well, it may be that we've solved it with this, so this could be enough, or tweaking this a little more may be all we need.
Might be.
Well, we've already sent it to council, so any further discussion on this particular item before we get to the last thing? Okay, next up is a motion to establish the fiscal year. Yeah, we. Oh, well, okay, then, okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, it goes to council, okay. Next up is a motion to establish a fiscal year 2008-2009 Urbana Public Arts Plan. Danielle?
I submitted into the packet a proposal for 0809, and I won't repeat that, especially due to the lateness of the hour. I think you've gotten a chance to read it, and it's brief. The issue is simply that we're in the process of getting applications for the commission. We don't have a commission in place. Typically, the commission would bring us a proposal. Since this is the last year of this council and the 4-year goals that we set out, it made sense to take both things that came from the task force and really look at the council goals and figure out a program for this year that fits within our budget and that is aligned with our council goals. So basically, the top 5, and I'm just going to add one additional thing that doesn't have financial impact, but the top 5 is for us to commission the production of videos or television shows aimed at addressing issues of diversity, race, ethnicity, and cultural history in our community, nation, and world. We will be looking at about $8,000 from UPTV PEG funds as an option of where the money could come from. It could come from other places as well, but that we do have money for that. The second would be for us to fund educational activities with youth involving creating work that explores issues related to sustainability. This could be done by selecting an artist in residence or soliciting a series of programs. We're looking at $30,000 and looking at the city recycling tax. Now that we have the budget before us, we do have scheduled $24,000 in tote bags and $6,000 to distribute tote bags. $24,000 in tote bags and about $10,000 in promotions. We could consider this funds as actually promotional and potentially a better use of our money than tote bags. So that would be one option for where it could come from. Number 3 would be funding Arts Everywhere mini grants up to $500 for activities in downtown, using the $5,000 that we actually currently budget from last year and the year before for arts promotion. Number 4 would be incorporating arts into the beautification and redevelopment of Philo Road by funding sculptures. We're looking at $40,000, which was staff's estimated cost. I do have some concerns that we'll get 4 sculptures out of that based on that cost. I think it's more realistic that we might get 2, but that we could look at either this could be part of the loan or we could do fundraising and grants as per the budget. And actually, we have 2 grants in the hopper, one that Anna is pursuing and one that I'm pursuing that might contribute to that. I can answer questions about that. Number 5 is to enliven City Hall by providing another venue for artists to show their work, which was one of the top requests that the artists had in the community input. We would establish a rotating gallery of work in City Hall that would be curated by our coordinator, and there's nominal costs for that, simply just some infrastructure costs since we wouldn't be hiring a curator. And the last piece, actually I'd like to add, is to pursue, number 6, pursue partnerships for additional programming. And the reason I add that is because the Society of Arts and Letters approached me this weekend saying that they would fund, like they did last year, not through the city but through themselves, a high school arts competition that feeds into a national competition. They fund it at somewhere between $700 and $1,000. They don't want any money from the city, but they would like some help with coordination, and it's those kinds of partnerships that I think we will be approached with. So I'd like to add that to make it clear that we're also open to additional partnerships that people may bring forward to us. So with that, I'd like to propose to send this public arts program for fiscal year 08-09 to council with a recommendation for approval.
Is there a second? Seconded by Brandon. Lynn has a puzzled look on her face. Lynn? Okay, well, while you're formulating a question, I'll ask this. I was hoping dearly that we could somehow improve bicycle parking around the city building. And I know there are lots of designs. I sort of envisioned a design of my own that somehow takes the city leaf structure in our logo and converts that into a bike rack of some kind to replace this minuscule bike rack that we have outside here. So I don't know if that can be worked into this as one of the things that happens.
Can I just respond to that briefly?
Yeah.
Because I got your email about that. I think that when we do infrastructure improvements, a lot of times we could stipulate when we go out to bid to do particular infrastructure improvements that we want artistic design to be part of that. And so I don't think it's currently in the CIP plan that we would update the bike parking, but it is on our desk this evening, and we could consider making sure that in the CIP plan we do improve bicycle parking at City Hall. And if we do that, then we could also stipulate that we would like an artist look at that. So that's an option for one way of doing it. I don't think that there's ever a case that we could have too much art, and it's also the case that a lot of the things that we do, we can be looking at aesthetics and artistic sensibilities with every single thing we do.
Yeah, well, one of the ways too might be that bike racks might be actually a way to get some uniformity across the city. What we use for bike racks on Phylum Road might be what we want to use here in downtown and in different places. So, something that represents the city of Urbana would be nice, and I know we want to encourage bicycling. Lynn, and then the mayor.
I guess I was going to ask the mayor, from a budget perspective, since Ron's here, the city recycling tax, have we identified funds already for that, or you know what I mean, or will that fit in?
Well, I was interested that Danielle said she wanted to do that instead of tote bags, but I'm concerned that Ron has already said that we're going to have some kind of an increase in our drain on the recycling fund, because we have a contract that's going to expire. So I think it's fine to have a program, but when you start budgeting, I think the budget should be done all together. You know, I don't think you should say we're necessarily going to take $30,000 from the city recycling tax until we know what the other claims are on that. So you were talking about tote bags for $24,000, and what was the other $6,000?
So if you look on page 57 of the supplemental expenditure report in the budget, under the recycling, the things that we propose to spend with the recycling fund, there's $20,000 in tote bags and $4,000 to distribute the support to distribute the tote bags, and then there's about $9,000+ for promotions. And I was thinking we could consider taking this is a promotions piece, and it's a way to actually speak to our youth about recycling, unlike brochures which speak more to adults. So we could consider promotions, or we could look at another source of, like the TIF or some other place for the $6,000 difference. These are the idea behind the public arts program is we're asked to actually stipulate where the money's going to come from, because that's often the question. Well, where's the money going to come from? So here's some proposals for where the money could come from, and I don't think that I think that this is a proposed source of revenue. It's not an absolute source of revenue. So basically, we'd make that proposal, and then staff could come back and say, well, actually, we'd like, if this is your priorities, it could come from these other places instead. That'd be fine.
Yeah, that would be reasonable.
I'm supportive of that.
Yeah.
I would point out that those recycling tote bags are functioning as recycling containers. They're not just, so when you take them away, you're
ending your recycling program, right?
Well, not the whole program, but the tote
part of
bags
it.
are provided for people to use to put the recycling in and carry it. And so be careful in taking that away until you talk to Rod Fletcher about what the total function of those is in the.
We can look into it.
They go to multifamily units.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
and so they also get distributed with literature inside them for new students coming into town.
About how
So
to
that's
become a civilized person and
Right, so that's how they use Dennis.
Well, I think it's probably a really good idea to start trying to kickstart an arts program. I guess maybe what I'm wondering about is that if we choose these particular projects as the art program for next year and we adopt them formally, what if in next year, since we're going to be having a Lincoln Bicentennial year, once the commission is created, there are ideas and concepts that would like to use some of the art program planning to make commemorative plaques or, engage the public, in art events relating to the celebration of the bicentennial. And if we don't see them here in this program, does that mean they're not possible to include in an arts projects for the coming year because they're also not going to be funded? I guess we don't really know quite what we might have an idea to do next year. So would we be limited in some way? Or these are proposals, but they're being adopted also? I don't know quite how to incorporate flexibility.
Mayor?
Well, we also have an arts commission by ordinance, and they're supposed to come up with a plan. So I think it's fine to make suggestions, but I think it would be a mistake to say this is the plan, because then what are they going to do? Are they going to just say they can only work on this? That would be my concern.
Danielle, then Brendan.
I think it's just an issue of getting started, which is that the Public Arts Commission, and I chaired the task force for a year, and I kind of watched how this worked. There's a lot of time of just getting familiar with how meetings run, and there's there's actually a lot for the commission to do just to implement any kind of plan, because there's selection committees that have to be created, there's policies and processes. So I see the commission's role in its first year to establish the processes by which decision-making would happen and to recommend those policies to council. So what I'm concerned about is actually that there's so much work that needs to be done, and typically this plan really is supposed to come to council before the budget season or as part of the budget season. That what would be nice is for the commission to actually see, oh, here's a set of things that's in the plan, and now we can implement. And we can then be working towards in February of next year, which is not that far down the line, because the commission will probably start meeting this summer. So looking at 6 months for them to develop proposals then for the next year. In terms of there being additional capacity, I think that this is, if you add up the dollars, it's kind of the minimum, and it fits a little bit with what we're looking at with the budget. And it's possible, well, first of all, with the birthday celebration, I kind of saw that as its own thing that already had a budget and was moving forward. But I don't think that this, this certainly doesn't say that we can't expend additional funds. And that's part of the concern, actually, with establishing a public arts program, is it shouldn't be something that's considered fixed in stone and we can't do arts outside of this. This is more, would be great to give staff direction to get started on the gallery, and the commission direction to say, hey, you can start assembling some selection committees, at least for the sustainability piece, which may start, and for the UPTV piece, and then and for the Arts Everywhere piece. So they can kind of get moving on those pieces right away. And from my perspective, the task force was, needed a lot of direction. They were really kind of lost for a while, and it took a lot longer to, and I think based on that experience, the commission having some real direction, they're going to appreciate that more than anything else, because they're going to know what they're charged with doing right away.
I might make a suggestion here, is that maybe you include some wording that indicates that these are guidelines to get them started in the coming year, and that we expect them to take over on their own as time progresses. Brandon.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think it does make sense, given that you have to kind of take this all into account during the budget to start them off with a plan like this. I think the way the commission structured, there was nothing that would preclude them from making amendments or recommending to council to make amendments to the plan for 0809. If they get seated, and they start having meetings and they say, oh, we left out something that's really important, it's doing a big mural on such and such or whatever. If they come up with something else, they can make a recommendation and send that to us at any time. There's nothing that prevents that. So I think the flexibility is still there, and this gives something to at least start on for now.
Dennis?
I guess I feel somewhat weird to create a commission and then to preempt its activities. I know that we want to start it and we want to have events, but I don't know if I would want to dictate to the commission what those events will initially be, because we kind of actually created the commissioners to bring to us a lot of concepts and suggestions from the community at large, not specifically from a few people on the city council, although certainly those could be identical. So I don't know. I mean, I would like to say that if we look at this suggestion, that we accept it as a suggestion and a recommendation, but not as the official plan of the commission, which doesn't exist yet. I mean, we could adopt these as the council's decision to have a budget aspect for arts this year, but I wouldn't want to say that this is. I don't want to preempt the commission's, the yet uncreated commission's role in bringing to the city public arts programs, because that's why we created them.
Okay, Lynn, and then Danielle.
Well, maybe before this comes to council next week, we can make a simple change that put the word potential in front of every word that says strategy, and it just say potential strategy. And then you've got just a guideline, and it's totally tweakable, and it just gives a bit of structure to get it rolling.
if the commission, I guess the ethos behind this is, if the commission gets this, they should feel like they're empowered to make recommendations and send things back to council. And so whatever we need to do to make that clear is fine. It's also the case that I think that we will not see any arts programming in the next 12 months if we have things sit as they are now, which is we'll set up a commission and that commission is trying to wrestle and it doesn't have a connection to council and it doesn't know what our priorities are. Because typically, council provides that input to the commission around this time of the year in the budget season. So that's the only reason this came, in addition to hearing from council members, including Dennis and Charlie, et cetera, who said, we want to see what the funds are going to specifically. Yes, let's talk about a proposal now. So this is coming from your actual request that we be looking at some specifics in terms of what we'd be funding. So we could say this is our recommended, council's recommended program for 0809, and that we wish to hear from the commission any changes, and they would send changes back to us just like we typically sign off on a plan. That would be fine, but I just want to give them something so that they can start running. And this is based on council goals and what the task force came up with and what the public input was.
If I could suggest that I'd like to see this go to council with Danielle modifying the language just a little bit to make it clear that these are potential projects, guidelines for them to get off and running quickly. And I think that's just
I'd like to make that motion.
Okay. Okay, so that's an amendment to the, amendment to the existing. Is there a second? Okay, it's been moved to amend the proposal. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so that brings us back to the main motion, which is amended to send a art program to council. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, this goes to council. Anything else? We are adjourned. Thank you.